What's that? Slid out.
I imagine there was scooch over, Alicia.
Serious.
All right, good morning. We'll go ahead and call this budget workshop to order. Lindsay, if you would please.
Mayor Lovins
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Holland, Commissioner Brownland,
Here.
Commissioner Plum here, Commissioner Sanderson
Here.
Commissioner Willie.
Here.
All right. We can ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as written.
Somebody.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There is no public here today for public comment. Are we taking public comment online? We don't do that.
We were not intending to.
Okay. All right. So then let's move on. Right? No comment.
Okay, we're way ahead of schedule already.
Do this.
Obviously, we went through this last week at the board meeting on Tuesday night. You all have a copy of the budget booklet presentation as well. I think really the key questions for you guys going forward are what specifically is the timing of future capital improvements, primarily involving fire stations projects. In the capital improvement program, we plugged in a new fire station 3 years from now. We also plugged in a renovation and expansion of fire station 1 at that time. So those are probably the key questions for you all moving forward. The other piece of the fire station 3 project and timing of everything is that if you all approve the 3 new fire stations in the current year or the proposed budget for next year, we will eventually need to add 6 additional firefighters to staff fire station 3. So that's probably ballparks out depending on your tax rate by the time we open that station. So the capital plan that you have before you today essentially shows construction of the station beginning in about 3 years, with debt service coming on in 4 years. That would be about the time that those new positions would be added. So keep in mind the CIP is really just a kind of a plan at this point in time. You all will and should review it every year and adjust it in whatever way you think is prudent going forward. Certainly things will change between now and then, but it represents, I think, a reasonable plan going forward. What I've heard from the board since I've been back for the last year or so is that public safety is a top priority, and probably fire and EMS services are the top priority. So that this budget and that capital plan reflects that. If that is changing or has changed, obviously you all should determine that and communicate that effectively going forward. So I think those are the biggest decision points for you all in the future. With regard to the current year, or I'm sorry, the proposed budget for next year, we have a 0.5 cent tax rate increase included in there. If you all are not comfortable with that, quite simply, we'll just need to identify $313,000 of additional revenues from somewhere else, or $313,000 of reductions somewhere in the budget recommendation. So Laura and I and department heads look forward to talking more with y'all about this today and we go forward over the next few weeks. As I said last week, hopefully we listened well to what you all have said over the course of the last year, both at your budget planning workshop meeting in January, but also just the various collective and individual discussions over the past year. So everything that's in here is ultimately rooted in some feedback that came from you all, mostly collectively, some individually. But it's your budget, so you all should adjust it in any way that more clearly achieves your goals and your vision for the town that will allow going forward. So I won't belabor any of the finer details. We'll get into some of that stuff with department heads right now, but look forward to talking with y'all about it. If you all are comfortable with this, by June the 9th, I would encourage you to adopt it on June the 9th. We have a public hearing scheduled for that date. We run the advertisements for that. But you don't have to. If you need more time, you have until June 30th by law to adopt the budget. Similarly, we've got the budget workshop meeting today. If you feel good about things at the end of the day, great. We'll work towards June 9th in the public hearing and adoption. But if you think we need to have additional discussions or budget workshops over the next 3 weeks or so, we can absolutely do that and schedule that on whatever schedule works for you. So thanks for being here today. And look forward to talking with you all.
Okay. John, if you want to start us up.
That was quick. So.
So the planning and inspecting budget is on page 70. Budget source. Goes for a few pages after that.
Yeah, so let's talk about planning. First, let me go over some of the 26-27 department goals. Administer and enforce the Unified Development Ordinance and North Carolina CAMA regulations. Review and update the Unified Development Ordinance policies as needed. Review and update the town's comprehensive land use plan to address long-term growth and sustainability. Maintain strict oversight of dune and vegetation protection regulations. Continued focus on stormwater management improvements. Implementation of recently awarded Tree City USA grant. And transition building inspections to town from county beginning mid-fiscal year. Did y'all want to kind of touch on that real quick?
Yeah, as we talked about last week, the budget recommendation does include hiring 2 building inspectors as of January 1st of 2027, completely funded by permit fee revenues. We anticipate $168,000 over the 6-month period from January 1 to June 30th next year. We believe that will enable us to offer very competitive building inspector salaries. As we've talked about before, it's really tough to recruit and retain qualified people in those roles. But we think with the resources available that we can attract some good quality people to these roles. The other aspect of this is that we've shifted the funding for the permit technician position, which also sits at the front desk in the county inspection building, to the permit revenues as well. So we're looking to fund the 2 building inspector positions, the permit technician, and also some incidental expenses as far as like iPads and operating expenses, those kind of things, with the new building inspectors. We think that this is a good strategy in terms of just overall customer service, a more seamless process, more coordinated process for our customers coming in. It will also enable us to address some of the enforcement gaps that we've talked about a little bit with the dune issues in the last couple of months. Just give us an opportunity to have more town eyeballs on the site more frequently, probably on average once a month, maybe a little more frequent, a little less frequent. And so I think that's a good strategy. That's the way the town operated probably for the first 60 years or so of its existence. By necessity, we abandoned that approach, and initially we contracted with Carteret County for building inspections because we just couldn't keep and recruit building inspectors. Eventually the town just handed the service to the county, which is what several other towns do, Carteret County do as well. So we would bring it back in-house. I think it would be a good thing for our customers. I'm a little bit apprehensive about it just because I know it's challenging to recruit and retain people for those roles. But I think we can offer a competitive salary that hopefully will attract good people here. If you all decide to move forward with this by adopting the budget, obviously we'll be working on that through the rest of the summer and the fall and have it ready to go by January 1st, recruit qualified building inspectors, get all the processes in place and those kind of things. So that's probably a real key decision for you all in this. We don't have to do this. We think it would be an improvement for our property owners and for our residents. So.
Is there enough business for 2 instead of just 1?
That's a great question. So the county issued, I think, 978 permits over the course of the previous 12 months.
Or Emerald Isle?
Within Emerald Isle, yeah. And total number of permits, I think, was about 3,800, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, inspections, 3,800 inspections over that time.
That ranges from everything from plumbing and electrical to everything, though. That's not just.
It's everything. It could be somebody replacing their deck. It could be somebody doing plumbing or electrical. It could be a brand new house. So it's the full gamut of things. Obviously, those smaller ones take less time, but so make sure I'm telling you the right number here.
Yeah, some inspections are inclusive of all the trades at one time. You're there one visit and you're doing all the rough ends.
Correct.
Yeah, so it was 974 permits, it was 3,828 inspections. And so that comes out to about 14 to 15 inspections per day on average. So I've seen times in my career where one inspector can do that many in a day, depending on the type of inspection and how involved it is. My approach initially would be to err on the side of having two inspectors, and then adjusting going forward. As needed. So just because I would want to make sure that we do it right
Mhm.
going forward, but that's a great question. So right now, maybe kind of borderline, whether we need two or one, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I suppose the inspections probably mostly happen all within the same time of year, right? At this time of year, when most of the projects finish up, probably.
Yeah, there's a cyclical nature to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
Also,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, finish.
No, I would just say that I think we're actually in a little bit of a slow period right now in general. That'll pick up tomorrow.
How sustainable are these positions? I mean, we're looking at basically paying for these with the revenue from the permit fees. And with the percentage built out and the boom that we've seen in rebuilds and tear downs. Long term, 5 years, 10 years, even 5, let's go with 5 only.
Sure.
How sustainable is being able to maintain those 2 building inspectors?
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
what I would say is, it clearly is going to depend on. I mean, if the demand is not there at some point in time, we would have to eliminate 1 or 2 building inspectors. And historically, it's changed over time depending on the demand. So, but I think the simple answer is that the fee revenues would be there to support the program. And it would be incumbent upon the leadership of the town to make the appropriate adjustments in the staffing at that time.
Given the challenge finding folks, is there a scenario where you might need to hire in advance of January 1st? Like go out and start looking earlier and have somebody on board before the permit revenue starts rolling in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there certainly would be some ramp up period there to be ready for January 1st. I don't know that that would be too significant. I would expect the county would work with us in a cooperative way to make it happen. So, I think that the other thing that we've talked about is if, let's say we get into a period where it's difficult to recruit or retain people, perhaps there's some other alternatives with part-time retired inspectors, for example, or perhaps consulting services or engineering firms and so forth. So that would not be my preference, but that would be the fallback position if we do get into it. And I'm concerned about. I mean, I think there's a risk there, but I think the benefits outweigh this.
And the inspectors would be required to have a level 1, level 2, level 3, correct?
Yeah, by my
I'm
way
gonna
of
say a standard level 1.
by my way of thinking, depends on what we can attract, but I would be looking to pay one individual a higher salary, require at least a level 2, maybe even level 3, depending on what we can attract for that salary. Certainly, the second person in my mind would be a level.
What's the cost like per code enforcement officer? Like we cut just plan on one position. What's the savings on that?
All right, let me ask you an important question to make the distinction. So when you refer to code enforcement officer, do you mean a building inspector or do you mean someone who just enforces town development ordinances? Because sometimes people get that confused, and I want to make sure I answer your question correctly.
Oh, I think it's commingled between the two. That's a hybrid and they're doing both.
Okay. All right. So in this recommendation, it is a dual responsibility. It's the North Carolina Building Code. It's also all of the town related ordinances, due vegetation, so forth, under John's direction and with his assistance and so forth. So, essentially what we figured on in the budget projection, is one inspector somewhere around $100,000 a year. Another one around $75,000 a year. Now that may change plus or minus, but we think those are really competitive salaries. Maybe a little too high, but we're trying to err on the side of attracting good people. And so, we'll see where it goes.
One of the things I'm thinking about the 300, what was that, the half-cent increase in tax we were talking about?
313,000.
Yeah, if there's a way we can make enough squeeze out of this budget that we don't have to do that.
You certainly can do that, and that's, I think, the key thing for you all to talk about if you want to bring the rate back down to the current rate. I would caution you against using building permit fee revenues to achieve that, because those revenues have to go toward the cost of providing those services. And so that's why we've got a couple building inspectors, a permit technician. We've kept the planning director's salary out of that right now. We have other development permit fees from the town that theoretically would cover that. So, but absolutely, if you want to get the rate back down a half cent, we can work to identify 313,000 other adjustments.
Well, if we cut like that one inspector, and there's 75,000 left over that we would have gone to a second code enforcement. And I mean, that's a big chunk of it there, possibly.
Well, it is, but keep in mind that 75,000 is supported by a building permit fee. And what we've done is we just assumed that we would keep the same fee schedule that Carteret County currently uses. And certainly in the future, we could take a look at whether or not we should adjust those fees higher or lower, depending on what your goals are. But for purposes of this, we've assumed the same fee that the county charges.
And do we have a contingency plan that in case the building does slow up and we have these positions here? I mean, I don't want to be so cold that we just like, sorry, we don't need you any longer. Bye.
Yeah. And
That
I
was
think,
my concern.
yeah, which is a completely valid concern. I really think it's up to management and ultimately board leadership at that time to make the hard decisions. You know, for example, going back to the recession of 2008, prior to that, things were booming in Emerald. We had 2 building inspectors on staff. Things got really slow for several years there. We held on to the second building inspector, quite frankly, under my leadership, probably too long. But we did that because the workload was declining, but we did that out of concern for that employee. Eventually, it got to a point after a few years where I just couldn't justify it anymore, and the board agreed, and we released one of the building inspectors at that time. But certainly tried to be as humane as possible in that, but I think that's what you're going to have to expect from whoever's in the manager role and in the elected official role at that time, just to manage your risk.
Because like a permit tech could be trained to enforce the zoning, whereas building inspection is specialized type of inspections requiring certifications and all too. But I could see where we could use the existing resources too to help support it, like a single code enforcement officer making the rounds daily out on job sites, making that presence, and then being supplemented with the permit tech. So what exactly do they do for their main jobs, like reviewing plans?
You talking about the inspectors, or you talking about
The permit tech now.
Yeah, so the permit tech is essentially now, it's just processing all the permit applications that we receive, whether they're online, whether they're in person, providing customer service, it's also answering inquiries, general inquiries at the front desk here. So, but keep in mind, it's pretty simple right now because it's just the town development permit applications. If we add building permits, obviously that's a whole nother level of record keeping and coordination and so forth. So that's why we've shifted some of that cost from some of that cost to the building.
And would administrative staff be less expensive than a permit tech?
They're about the same. Not a significant difference there.
What's the benefit cost of one person's salary?
It's
15,
it's about 30%.
30, okay.
It's actually about what, 28% plus about $12,000 for the insurance. So it's 28% for the percentage driven benefits, retirement, FICA, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then the health insurance is $12,000 per year, roughly. So I think the retirement contribution is around 15% from the towns, and there's 5% 401k, the FICA Medicare is 7.65%. So
Could you do maybe have another meeting where run a model showing if we had one code enforcement official with a good retention salary, someone that's like maybe got their level 2s, level 3 certifications, they can do zoning code, learn CAMA, maybe even already has experience in CAMA, And then the other scenario where, of course, obviously with both inspectors, but showing what would it look like if we used only one, how much savings that would be, and where we could use that money. And then have the contingency plan in case things did slow up. How would we fund those positions?
Yes, I think we could certainly do that. The thing that I would caution you about is let's say you all adopted this plan exactly as it was presented. It is structured right now so that the permit fee revenues that we expect will cover 100% of the cost of those building permits and building inspection services. If you reduce those expenses by say roughly $100,000, right, by the time you've got to lower the junior inspector and all the benefits and stuff associated with that, you still theoretically have the permit fee revenue, and you're starting to get a little bit out of whack there on permit fees exceeding the cost of the service. And so it just would caution you about that. I mean, the revenues are pretty strong from the county. They brought in about $338,000 revenues just out of Emerald Isle last year. So again, we can certainly look at that, right? And we can consider that. But I just would want to make sure that we set ourselves up for success if we do this and then adjust back if need be.
So eliminating one position really wouldn't save in the budget because the revenue is coming from the permit and you didn't pull it from somewhere else.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can absolutely make that change, but that's not going to help you with the tax rate question. I guess with the simple ones. So. I'm sorry, you two got the sunspot there. It'll fade greatly.
I'm glad.
Other than that, John's was pretty straightforward. It's the planner and it's the permit technician, and it's the typical enforcement of town regulations. John and I have had a lot of conversations, understandably, in the last couple of months about making sure that we're handling CAMA permits correctly, making sure we're handling the vegetation issues correctly. I feel confident about John's approach going forward.
I would like to add, I'm sorry you had to talk so much about my stuff. Thank you for that. But I did want to mention software and subscriptions. We got with iWorks because I know when I was at Newport, they had a system, they had iWorks as well, and they had the capabilities of people just paying through an invoice rather than calling the town hall every time they wanted to make a payment. iWorks does still offer that, and you'll see that in that line item that there would be a $1,200 setup cost, but we would have that capability for our citizens to make it easier for the citizens and for town staff. So basically, when they were issued a permit, or before they were issued the permit, when they were invoiced, they would be invoiced directly, and they can pay off a link from that invoice rather than calling the town hall and
Yeah, I think that's
make a payment. So that's another one I mean.
yeah, that's
Mention.
What's that cost for that subscription?
So currently we're paying $51.25 annually, and this would be a proposal of $63.25, which should include that $1,200 setup cost.
Like, do you have a tally of all the town subscriptions and services like that? Like it's for like IT software subscriptions townwide. Do we have a cap on that, or do we have an idea what the total is?
Yeah, I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I mean, we certainly can provide a list of those things for you, but I'm not sure if you have a better answer than
I don't have one prepared at the moment, but yeah, we can certainly pull it together. The majority of the townwide IT is held in the non-departmental department, just for ease of, so we don't have to parse it out to every department. But some departments do have their own specialized, just for planning. So we put the iWorks subscription in the planning department, or the fire emergency subscription would be in the fire department. So if it's very specific to the department use, we put it in their line. And so, yeah, we could certainly do it. We just don't have it in one document at the moment. That's easy enough to pull. So there's a lot of software that makes our jobs more efficient and is better for the residents and the customers. But yeah, I don't have it
Mhm.
administrative one, but I can get it for you, just let us know.
Yeah, so whenever you get that file, just shoot that to me. I'm interested in what that would be. I was interesting enough, we did it in our household, and I was surprised at how much we had in subscriptions and ones we've gotten out and stuff like that. It's crazy. It adds up quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, besides that, we would also put, propose $20,000 in non-capital equipment. Line item, just for proposed, computer gear needed for building inspectors if they were. Right,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
And then we would also we're budgeting $40,000 in the contracted services line item for that climb to Tree City USA. And that would be reimbursed at 75%, so that takes care of all that stuff. Besides that, I would mention that we're still planning on trying to get the RCCP grant. That was extended out due to funding reasons to early next year, to think in February. So I'm still planning on, getting that knocked out, so they'll pay for a land use plan update.
Frank, with two building inspectors, if we end up with two, we have one vehicle available. What would the other drive?
Yeah, our intent is to take one of the spare vehicles when police or fire or public works and park and rec, and assign it to the junior building inspector. And again, on the building inspector question, right, I think it's an important question to make a decision for you all. But just know that ultimately it's rooted in the concerns that you all expressed about customer service and about enforcement of town ordinances. And after considering all of the various angles and considering the financial implication, our recommendation is probably the best approach to achieve the goal. But if there are other strategies or other solutions, absolutely all ears, and we're happy to investigate those or to try to implement something else. But just for example, we could go out and hire a dedicated code enforcement officer just to visit all the sites and enforce all of the town development regulations. That's going to come at an additional delta cost in your budget. That's ultimately going to be supported by either property tax revenues or general tax revenues, or by higher zoning permit fees, which, John, one of the things that we need to mention is that the current fee is $100 for a zoning permit fee in town. We have a recommendation here to raise that to $125. So, and that's for everything. That's whether that's student vegetation, whether that's a new house, whether that's a driveway permit or what have you. And what we proposed is taking the additional $15,000 that would be generated by that into an environmental stewardship fund, as you all heard suggested during meetings earlier this year. We haven't come up with a specific plan for how to use that money, and we welcome that conversation with all of you on what you'd like to accomplish with that. Because of the Tree City USA grant, my thought was maybe there's some way to provide trees to different people in town for planting, that just because it kind of matches up well, but that doesn't have to be that. You really can do whatever you all would like to be, but so that's in there too, and that's an important consideration for it. If you're not comfortable raising that fee, obviously we can keep it at $100 and take another strategy for the environmental stewardship fund, or maybe not do that.
Yeah, and because on the Tree City, it's gonna require like a tree inventory of trees, significant trees, probably not deadwood or anything like that, but I think it's 8 inches larger on county property, that we're going to have to get an inventory done, adopt a tree ordinance, or improve the one we have now, or it might be not what we have exactly, but all that kind of is going to be needed to be funded. So that's why I was that 15,000 that's in the map. That's why I thought that was going toward help fund some of that.
No, that's not going specifically for the Tree City USA program. We have grant revenues that will pay for the tree inventory and the other aspects of that program. That $15,000 will be set aside, and you all will ultimately determine what we're going to do with that money. Again, my thought was maybe we provide trees to interested property owners just to encourage tree planting, but it doesn't have to be that. But the grant will fund all of the things that we need to do for the Tree City USA program. There's a $2,500 local match embedded in John's budget, but other than that, it's all grant funding.
When we were compiling the budget and put that environmental stewardship fund in there, we were talking about perhaps it was trees or some kind of vegetation. Actually, you'll find it in the recreation budget line, just because they do a lot of the landscaping, tree work and stuff, and so for ease of, if that's the route that we go, it's there, so just in case you're looking for it, Liz, that's. It's in there.
John, can you tell me again, what was the contracted services?
Contracted services.
Normally, I
It's
think.
mostly the Tree City USA.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
it's covered by grant.
By grant, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the past, we've also used that for stormwater engineering. If, we had a large permit where we had to have a stormwater engineer, that's where that type of engineering assistance or contracted service or the GIS services, if we've ever had outsourced some GIS work, we would place it in that line, just for history's sake, for John's sake, previous to him coming on board.
That's okay. I guess, one last thing I can mention, I still got 5 minutes, but I'm not gonna take up all that time.
We were ahead of schedule.
In the training portion of the budget, you'll notice that, I kept it the same amount as last year, because I got some stuff to say, I got my annual stuff to take care of for my CZO. But certified zoning official is something I think would benefit our permit technician. They would teach him code enforcement type stuff. It would add on to what he has, give him that certification. In case we ever needed him to assist in different things. So I'm planning on sending Mikey later this year to get a CZO. So.
Yeah, that's a good worthwhile course. I got a lot out of that one. Yeah, good, yeah, so.
Any other questions for John? No?
I appreciate the job you're doing.
Thanks, John.
Tough job. Yeah, I'm sure they're doing good. Thanks.
Have a great day, John.
All right, Joe.
Public Works starts on page 90 and solid waste starts on page 97. For both of those sites. Okay. Make it away.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we were gonna do under the capital outlay. As you know, we do kind of maintain the stormwater and manage the stormwater. We're responsible for maintenance of buildings and public works, asphalt, street repairs. So one of the things we identified, the replacement for some building stuff, our public works roof. Under the capital outlay. We needed a roof for that. We noticed that the roof here at the admin building needs to be replaced. That's about $30,000. The roof for the public works came in around $62,000. And fire admin, the ODMS building, that roof needs to be replaced. So we'll hopefully roughly around $30,000 for that.
95, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, that's on page 95, sorry. Then for some of our stormwater stuff, we noticed that in Cape Emerald, we're responsible for maintaining that. Through agreement, for the stormwater, it runs from Ocean Oaks through there into the two ponds and then discharges out to the ocean. So there's one of the risers or grates in there needs to be fixed and replaced. It's deteriorated from around the trees and stuff like that. So we have to replace that. We got a quote for around $8,000 to do that one. And then I've been asking for a few years for some backup pumps for our in-ground stormwater infiltration system on Coast Guard Road. I was asking for 5 pumps. We narrowed it down to at least 2 this year, just so we can have here as a backup. And we identified the 2 that kind of give us the most issues are on Conch and then at Island Circle. We've had some issues with those where we've had to fix. So that way we have at least those 2 pumps in stock, because if they go down, sometimes it can take a few days, but lately it's been taking at least up to about 10 to 15 days to get those repaired and replaced out. So if we have these backed up, then we can swap them out, get the other ones repaired, and then we'll have those on the shelf to use in case something happens. Spinnaker's Reach has 2 pump stations, but there's 4 pumps total, 2 in each pump station. So if one goes down, we're still pretty good there, so we can do that. Conk and actually Deerhorn are the same pump, so if anything happens, they'll kind of swap those out for that. And then the only other thing we really have in the public works for capital outlay would be some signs. We're trying to upgrade the signs on Coast Guard Road. They're starting to, the reflection and stuff starting to go away from them, so we like to upgrade those and other signs throughout, but we've noticed that and we get a few complaints mostly on those signs that they're getting harder to read. And then my next major thing for there would be just to update some of our roadwork signs and cones. As far as our vehicles and stuff, we're pretty good in the public works for those.
Yeah, a couple things on page 95 that we didn't include funding for. Joe had requested that I just wanted to explain to you what our thought process was and what the strategy was. So, Joe had requested funding to replace the generator here at this building. The generator that we have here actually was a used generator when we installed it, 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. Still functions, and we would really like to replace that with something better, but it still works fine. And obviously at the end of the day, something has to give. And so we delayed that until next year potentially. So the other thing, the Cape Emerald Pond dredging funds, we actually made I think a nice improvement there just in the last few months. So hopefully that's going to tide us over, and hopefully that's nothing we need to worry about next year. On the street resurfacing, that number there, that 155,300, that was the additional amount beyond our roughly $200,000 of POW bill money. We would need another 155,000 plus or minus to be able to get to our 2-mile goal. And so conversations with the board at your budget planning workshop back in January, I think everybody would like to see more street resurfacing, but basically it was indicated that that probably wasn't as high of a priority as some of the other things that we have going on, particularly in terms of public safety. So we didn't include that extra 155,000 for street resurfacing, again, simply because something has to give, right? So what's in there is roughly almost $200,000. We think that'll get us about 1.25 mile plus or minus. But I just wanted to explain what we didn't recommend and why, and that may be something you want to think about either for the recommended budget or in the future years.
Can you clarify for me, Frank? I thought the redrive pump project was happening now.
It is.
So why are we carrying over into the other budget?
Yeah.
Next year's budget.
So the board approved a contract in March for the installation of the pipeline, and I'm waiting for the pipe materials to come in right now. They had a supply issue as we bringing those in, so they're ready to go when the material comes in. But the board approved the contract for $125,000 in March for the pipe installation. This 100,000 is for the actual installation of the pump station. And we've had the materials for the pump station sitting at the Public Works facility for probably a couple of years, I think. Initially, we were looking at trying to use excess revenue in the current year budget to also fund the pump station installation. And if you remember, we talked about the excess property tax revenue in the current year. We wound up redirecting that for basically a down payment on the Pebble Beach land. When you all approved the financing strategy for the Pebble Beach land at the April meeting, we redirected that money. It was kind of 6 in one hand, half dozen the other in terms of what we were going to do in the current year or next year. Ultimately, we decided to basically recommend we put that as a down payment toward Pebble Beach, which, by the way, that land is ours. So that all completely finished up yesterday. It was great. Good news.
Thanks.
What's the life cycle of the pumps?
Well, they've been in. Really, it all depends. I mean, we've gotten 5 years, some before impeller wear out or lightning strike or something like that. No. I'm trying to think. Deerhorn. I don't know if we might have took that one out, but around 5 to 6 years we usually get. That's when we start seeing if the impellers are wearing out or the windings or something go on.
It's not worth repairing. It's like,
Well, we'll send out repair, but the backup was, like I said, was for because A lot of times if we send it out for repair, it could take anywhere from 2 days to 15 days to get that pump back. And a lot of times what'll happen, and just so happens when it does, it's usually when it's storm here, so, then we gotta bring in the pumps and set pumps up in hoses and stuff like that. This would just hopefully help us, eliminate any of that of water backing up on the street and running off the pump hoses down the road and stuff like that, so we have it. We can just get it in there, get it back up online quick and easy, and not go through so much flooding on the streets or anything like that.
It's like a contingency fund. It's
Yeah.
good to have that backup.
Yes,
Absolutely. So that's a need, not a want.
yes, yeah, so now with, obviously the generators at all the in-ground pump stations on Coast Guard Road, hopefully, we won't ever have any issues like Lawrence or anything that we're down without power and it's backed up, that does keep running and hopefully avoid some of that issues.
Any other questions?
Solid waste. Solid waste starts on 96. Goes for several pages. Take it away.
Oh, thanks. Well, some of our department goals are to, fund 100% of direct and indirect solid waste expenses through our annual fees. Meet established goal to collect our debris from the brush truck within, 5 to 7 days. We try to keep the litter free on the right of ways. Laura does many, but I help when she needs to monitor the Simmons and Simmons contract and the other contracts with GFL and stuff like that. Obviously, we try to keep, overflowing trash on the beach strand from happening and on Ocean Drive. We're still continuing with the pack it in, pack it out version. And we have the Pelletier Yard debris site that we're, kind of monitoring, keep going with that, with mulching and stuff like that, where a brush truck dumps. Some of our, I don't really have much in the capital outlay. I did ask for updating some trash cans for the beach. We put, I think, 25,000 in there. And now depending on what direction we all go, when y'all make your decision, or if we're keeping it the same, or if you want to add more trash cans out there, we'll have the money to do that. If that's the way we like to proceed. I know we have we'll hopefully get 2 new trucks for the beach. The 2 that we currently use now are 10 years old with approximately, one's almost, I think, 100,000 miles, the other one's like around 80,000 miles, 10 years old. We would go with the lease option on those, seeing that they're on the beach. And one of the trucks actually was came from Parks and Rec and was damaged during Florence, so that one's pretty banged up. But we've been using that one for a while, and they're just getting a little to the point where the repairs are getting unnecessary. Did ask for a new UTV because ours broke down, and between Laura and Frank, we've found some extra money in this year's current budget to purchase that for this year. We're just waiting for actually my turn signals to come in on it, and hopefully we'll have that by the end of the week. We're praying. So that was something, so we didn't have to put in for this year's budget. There was I believe Laura can help me on this one, we're asking for a little bit of cost increase on the solid waste fees with GFL, or not GFL, but Coastal Regional Management going up possibly for their fees is coming up fiscal year too. So that's why between solid waste, right? I believe it had a recycling fees were going up.
Yeah, the expense from, we always reach out to the land, I call them Cush Forma, but the regional solid waste authority, and make sure to find out what their tipping fees are. So they're currently for $57 a ton. Now they're proposing $62 a ton, and they recommended that we put that in our budget. So tipping fees for both recycled material and landfill material are going up. We also have a consumer price index in our service contracts with Simmons and GFL. So those, so we have that inflationary factor in there. And we do try to calculate, it's not set up as an enterprise fund as far as, we don't have it as a pool business fund for solid waste, it is on the tax bill. But we calculate all the direct costs from the solid waste department and the indirect costs such as the depreciation on those vehicles. The UTV depreciation, overhead costs and stuff, and so that's why we're proposing an increase in the residential fee. It's currently $335 per year. And we're proposing $360 per year, so I always want to emphasize the per year amount, because it does sound like a big number, but if you spread it over 12 months, it's not so tough to, so. And we've talked a lot about that, we talk about our total service that you get for that fee, and want to always check and balance and make sure that makes sense, and so we felt like that was still reasonable for all the services that we get.
Since we're increasing the price, if it is decided to put more cans on the beach, is that taken into account with the increase
Yes,
residential? price?
Yes, because obviously if we put more cans on the beach, then the dumpsters and the compactor we use will be dumped more frequently.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the $25,000 that's included in there for new beach strand, trash cans and recycled cans. That basically would fund new containers at every location if we ultimately decide to add them back at every location. I think the cost to replace the existing locations was about half that.
Yes, it'll be about that.
So which we'd like to replace the existing ones anyway at some point in time. So the money is there to do that if you all decide you would like to. One thing I wanted to point out to you too is that I'm not suggesting we make a change, but for example, it costs more money to recycle than it does to throw something away. We pay with the new adjustment to the GFL contract, it's $80 per ton to process the recycling materials. Laura just told you we expect to pay $62 per ton for the landfill to throw material away. In addition to, we spend 1 day per week collecting all the recycling materials. And so it's just an interesting tidbit to keep in mind. Recycling obviously is very important to many people, but it is actually more expensive to the town of Emerald Isle than growing.
Should that be because of economies of scale? We only use GFL for recycling and for dumpsters rather than for our total solid waste program?
I don't think it has anything to do with who the contractor is. It's just it often fluctuates depending on the market for recyclable materials. At one point in time, there was no cost, right? At one point in time, they paid us, and then there was no demand for recyclable materials, so it costs money to get rid of them basically and process them and sort them and all that. So I don't think that really matters whether it's Simmons or GFL or any other contractor. It's just kind of the reality of the market.
Have we verified that?
I mean, from firsthand knowledge and experience, I guess.
But do we contact the contractor and verify?
In what way?
Like, when's the last time we did RFP? How long has Simmons & Simmons been doing this?
Simmons & Simmons started on January 1st of 2007, so coming up on 20 years with us.
We have done an RFP since.
Well, it sort of evolved over time. So initially, and I'm trying to search my memory back. Initially, Simmons has always collected the recyclables for us since 2007. Initially, they were taken to a facility in Jacksonville, and they sorted the materials, and the market was such that sometimes we made money on that. Sometimes there was no cost with that, and they just transported it there as part of their contract. Over time, as the markets changed for recyclable materials, at one point in time, we were paying to take it to Jacksonville for it to be sorted. And I want to say maybe in the early years of $25 a ton or $30 a ton or something like that. And then one of the years, probably maybe 10 years ago, we did a renewal, and with GFL, we actually negotiated for them to take their recyclables for free. And so instead of us paying the facility in Jacksonville, we built it into the GFL contract, said, hey, if you still want our dumpster service, we want you to take this stuff for free, and they agreed to do that. And then over time, and obviously I don't know the specific details over the last 7 or 8 years, but over time, as the markets continued to deteriorate for the materials, GFL had to start charging some amount per ton to sort the materials. And it actually wound up being a little bit better because GFL initially absorbed that cost for us and saved us money. it's also maybe a little bit shorter for Simmons and Simmons to take it to Newport as opposed to Jacksonville. So every little bit helps in that sense. So, could we find a better company to sort the materials? Maybe. But really,
I'm just talking about as a whole, with
Yeah.
our solid waste collections.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could, right? So they've been doing it for 20 years, I think.
They do a good job, but not saying we can't find an equivalent or find out what's out there, but it's like we haven't looked.
Yeah, so it's reasonable thought, reasonable question. We have always, at least in my time with the town, and you all correct me during the time I was gone, but Simmons and Simmons, I can't tell you how great they are. I mean, they have always done just a phenomenal job for Emerald Isle, at least during my time before I left and since I've come back. Because we were so pleased with the quality of their service and because just the overall service level in Emerald Isle is just amazing. Like it's better than just about any place anywhere, I think. So there wasn't any interest in going out to solicit proposals, but we certainly can do that. Quite frankly, I worry more about Simmons and Simmons just saying, hey, we don't want to do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
That's my bigger fear because I
For
think.
those of you who have lived here, for a while, the prior solid waste contractor left a great deal to be desired and an even more deal to not be desired, including completely squishing all the garbage on the streets to the point that the fire department had to go and hose it off to get the flies and the smell away. Some of you recall that. It's like Simmons and Simmons is the Maserati of it.
Yeah.
And we're paying the Maserati price, but
It's worth it.
I have properties across.
I'm sure you're gonna defend it, but
And to pay for
it's a good
traffic.
company, but there's also we have to compare ourselves. The closest thing I can find to it is Morehead City. And they have a 10,000 year-round population. We have 4,000. All right, then you're gonna throw in, well, we have seasonal rentals, okay, but we still have the same number of properties. That doesn't increase. That has, receptacles for pickup. And then there's a $361,130 difference between the solid waste revenues and department budget that's being shown. And I have this, I like to say itemized list of what that is. There's nothing in there. It's just it's just 20 years without just checking the market to see if there's any competition. What's driving the cost up? Because that's that's $1 million more than Morehead City.
Well, understandable concern, but let me explain this to you. So just particularly for the new folks with us here. So that solid waste fee, it covers the Simmons and Simmons contract, right? It covers the GFL contract, which is the dumpster service for the condominiums and also the town facilities. And so that contract with Simmons and Simmons is right about a little less than $1.2 million. And as you can see, the total budget for solid waste is right at about $2 million. And so the other things that solid waste fee funds is it funds the brush collection that our town staff provides. It funds the beach strand trash collection. So there are other things in there in addition to the GFL contract and so forth. So just so you're clear, the Simmons contract is probably a little more than half of the overall solid waste budget. And then, of course, we've got the tipping fees in there that we pay to now the Coastal Environmental Partnership, used to be Coastal Regional Solid Waste Management Authority in Kerswama. And so just understand that part. I guess I mostly want Chris and Kyle to know that fee covers more than just the Simmons contract and the GFL contract. And I think probably Jay and we should know that, hopefully maybe Roy too. So
White goods.
yeah, I mean, we also collect white goods once a month throughout the town. And so, yeah, is it unusual to keep a contract for 20 years? Yeah, I'd say that's unusual. Is there value in going out for competitive bids? Yeah, there probably is. But the reason that the town never has, and the reason that I would recommend that we don't, is because Simmons just does such a phenomenal job for us at a very reasonable cost. And our fee comes out to $30 a month for all of the services. We have twice a week collection, we have once a week cycling, we've got all the brush collection, the beach strand collection, the appliances. So it's a really good deal. And the reason that it's a good deal for an individual property owners because we have all those second homeowners, right? We have all those folks sharing that cost with us. If you were out in the country and you were contracting for once a week trash service, you're probably paying $40, maybe more. So, but it's a reasonable expense. It's been 20 years. Same thing with the GFL contract. So I'll take you back even further. So Alicia alluded to it before. The contractor prior to Simmons and Simmons for the residential collection was Waste Industries, which became GFL. So we had a lot of problems with them, and that led to us seeking new proposals back in 2006. But we kept the contract with GFL for the dumpster service because they were better equipped to do that and do a pretty good job at that. I've been pleased with their service on that. So the GFL contract probably even goes back to 30 years, maybe 40 years, ultimately on the Waste Industries name. So with Simmons and Simmons, honestly, I probably get 25 times more compliments about them than I ever get complaints. They're just really a great contract.
I think maybe we can get a better price from them, because Emerald Isle is an outlier. We're the only town in Carter County that doesn't use GFL. We're the anomaly that we use Simmons and Simmons and we pay the Maserati price for our boutique trash pickup. And I was wondering about, like, there's a clause in the contract that requires the contractor to lease a space near the town and store their trucks there and with office space. And of course, that happens to go to a former commissioner. And so there's a little bit of that, but I mean, could money be saved if we don't require a contractor to lease a space, and who knows what that lease is? Because we know it's being passed on to taxpayers. So, yeah, do you have any idea what that would be? Or
So I do not know what the amount of the lease is for the facility in Swansboro, but the reason that the facility is in Swansboro, so when we first approved when the board first approved the contract with Simmons and Simmons in 2006, Simmons and Simmons rented what is now John's Golf Carts out on Highway 58, kind of near the Coastal Haze restaurant out there. And that was a space, a few miles from town. They were all set to go, and the town of Pelletier got very upset, did not want the trash trucks at that location. And so Simmons was in a bind. And so they wound up leasing a space in Swansboro that they're still at in Swansboro, kind of down there near Burger King down there. And it's owned by Floyd Messick, former commissioner, but that was always disclosed to folks as we went through it. So
he's the commissioner at the time.
So he was the commissioner at the time. And so, could they save some money by renting someplace else? Perhaps, maybe not. I don't know the details of that lease, whether that's a really good deal or not a good deal or what. But it has worked well, at least in my experience.
They're at a prison, right?
I'm sorry, can you finish what you were gonna say?
I was going to say that we have trash service at properties across the bridge and we pay, if not the same, it's a little bit more weekly than what we pay for our services here. And that's just one trash can, one pickup, and it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
And so the service we get here is it's unparalleled. And I'm happy to pay it personally.
Roy, in your research, is Morehead Cities pick up 1 day a week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
1 day a week, but
Okay.
they also don't, I mean, I'm not knocking the service. I mean, the service is good. I just wonder if we could get it at a better price if we don't put requirements on them that they have to lease something nearby. Or if they can find something cheaper. I'm not knocking the contract, but I'm just curious because I think the taxpayers deserve market testing. We owe it to them just to see if there's anything else out there that we'll tell them the quality service we expect, and if they can't meet it, but it's just worth, to me, if we haven't even explored it or looked at it, I think it's prudent. It's like, it's just shopping in today's market.
Did you compare pricing for GFL with the larger pickups? I felt like that was a discussion.
I mean, we certainly could. I mean, we did not. I mean, the board just approved an extension, a 1-year extension of that
Okay.
contract because that contract ends on June 30th, 6 weeks or so. We can certainly go out for competitive proposals for the residential trash collection if you all would like to. One thing I would encourage you to do is if you want to do that, I would not do that and try to make a change for January first, because there's an awful lot of work that goes into preparing the bid package and submitting the bid, and then whoever is awarded the contract has to buy trucks, and there's lead time on stuff like that, so. Our intent is to bring a 1-year contract extension to you all sometime between now and December. Award a 1-year extension to Simmons and Simmons for calendar year 2027. If you all decide that you want to go out for competitive proposals on that, it would be helpful for you all to provide that direction. Really, I'd say probably sometime maybe around October, November of this year, so that we can do it right if we're going to do.
I think we might be well served to just do some open source market research, make sure that we're in the general range. But I wouldn't want to put a package out on the street and have someone say, it's a pain in the ass going over that bridge anyway. We'll just not bid on it or something else, because I like the service too. And I have the same experience between the brush truck and the trash collection. Those are the two things I hear the most positive feedback about. I wouldn't want to upset that apple cart unduly, but I think it's responsible to look and see, make sure we're not too far off the mark as to what the current market pricing is.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but it's certainly, I think I feel like I owe it to the taxpayers. That's why they want me to put me in office to be fiscal responsible for them. And so I think it's just worth market testing just to see what's out there. Not saying that I want to switch or will switch. If it's a few dollars difference, that's a no brainer. But it's I do like to find out what that $361,130. I'd like to see that itemized, please.
Yeah, so we'll do that for you. It's all indirect costs. It's a portion of my time, it's Laura's time, it's insurance, it's all lots of different things.
That's just a good chunk of change there, and we're talking about right now that's how much, ironically, we're raising taxes, 0.5%, and I'm trying to find a way to make all that we can not to, if we can help it.
But we can't, we're collecting a solid waste fee to offset those costs, and I don't believe that we can use a solid waste fee to reduce the $0.5.
I'm just curious where that money's at. There's nothing that tells me where that money's going. I'd like to know. And then there's because we're also paying you're right, we're seasonal, but we're paying that seasonal cost year round. There's no difference. And there's also a disparity in the people who have one rollout trash can versus a vacation rental that has 8 rollout trash cans or a 15-bedroom single family dwelling. So I'd like to see us maybe address that too. Just looking out for the folks.
We can certainly look at that. Years ago, we looked at that distribution of the solid waste collection between the summertime and the other non-visitor times of the year. Essentially, the short answer is it all kind of balanced out. By the time you factored in these large homes on the oceanfront, for example, posing of 5 or 6 cans, and also considering that they don't dispose of anything in, say, January, December, whatever. The data that we looked at showed that it all kind of balanced out. And I looked at that again when I came back last summer, and the trend was still pretty much the same, that it kind of balances out. Now, could we come up with some other system, the way we charge per container or something like that? Yeah, I'm sure that we could. I would probably just caution you to make sure that it's not an overly burdensome, complicated system that's more of a headache to enforce and to monitor. And it gets really tricky, right? So, those are the trade-offs that you have to make. And so over the years, we've always just considered that it kind of balances out. It's simple, it's easy, works well. Doesn't mean we should keep doing it. Doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, but those were the reasons for it. I just did some quick math while we were talking. And so, essentially, the monthly cost to Simmons and Simmons for our taxpayers, our ratepayers, I should say, a little less than $14 a month for just the services they provide. And so that doesn't include the tipping fees associated with the trash and recycling, but just the service contract, out to about $14 per month of that $30 per month that we charge our residents. Again, tipping fees are in there, recycling processing's in there, beach drain collection, brush collection, appliance collection. So. $14
Is that per property?
per property. And that's an estimate. I just did some real quick math with it. I'm sure it's off a little bit one way or the other, but that should be pretty close.
Now, I don't know if there's a way to cut that so that, the year-round resident with one can is subsidizing the multi and, dwellings and, you know, the businesses out. Anyway.
Anything else? I'll take that was used for now.
Yes.
But I'll have some other questions. I'll just send you some other questions.
Doors. Please.
Good job, Bill. We appreciate it. What you guys do too, man. It's awesome.
Chief Panzarella?
Police department starts on page 75. We go through page 80.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Still warm.
Yeah.
Just want to start by going over a couple of our goals. We have several listed there. But some things we want to continue to do is maintain transparency and open communications with the residents and visitors. We want to secure efficient information sharing between law enforcement agencies and basically continue to keep the crime rate low here in Emerald. There's 3 of the 7 that are listed there. The police department team that worked on the budget in conjunction with Frank and Lauren did everything we could to keep our budget as lean as possible. We don't believe in overinflating or asking for things that we truly don't need. And so initially we had some asks such as replacing computers in our front lobby to assist with residents coming in applying for online permits that may not have access to a computer at home. We needed a gun safe to continue to ensure we're in compliance with our recently awarded state accreditation. In looking for ways to fund those, we found that we had some money in our drug asset forfeiture. When the officers out here on the street, they make an arrest, they're taxed on those illegal drugs. So we chose to use that money to fund some of those smaller projects. So our 2 major asks, I guess, would be actually 4. We need to replace 2 line patrol vehicles, and we would like to do those with Ford F-150s. And the conversation evolved into that I believe, and Frank, please correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, that we would purchase those vehicles outright for patrolling. We're also looking, and the cost of that would be $100,000, $50,000 per vehicle. They also have an upfit of $12,700. We were able to locate a company that can do all of our upfitting for us at a reduced price to what we were paying before. The fire department initially was doing it for us, but some people have cycled out. And with the way things are going, it's got much busier. And so we were able to locate another company that was able to help us and help keep our costs low. We then decided that we need to replace 2, the time was right to replace 2 Jeep Gladiators. We are starting to see some issues with those, performance issues. And so it's time to replace those. And we decided the best vehicle to do that with was a Jeep Wrangler. Because in the summertime, there's such an increase of pedestrian traffic on our beaches, we found that the Jeep Wrangler was small enough that the officers, didn't have as much trouble seeing around, such as the big F-150s or the Silverados we currently have. And even the Gladiators, they have a better depth of view when they're. And the cost of those to lease those would be about $800 per month per vehicle. with an upfit cost of $8,250. The reason why we can keep that upfitting cost so low is a majority of that equipment can be reused. We will probably look to replace anything on the outside that was affected by the sand and the salt. That was also another reason to lease those vehicles, is because they were exposed to the sand and salt elements. Also, again, in order to keep our budget lean, we looked at modifying our customer service representative. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong, the suggestion came to reduce our time that they are there till 7 p.m. at night. So what you currently have is you have Monday through Thursday, you have someone in our office till 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday. Friday and Saturday, we have someone until midnight. And so we gathered some numbers, and the numbers just really weren't showing that they were doing a lot past the time of about 7 p.m. at night. And so looking to do that. And if we did that, and if that was something that was appealing to the board, we would be able to cut those part-time hours by about 832 hours over the year.
Mike, with the gladiators, are we looking at trading those in, or are we looking at selling those outright? And if we're looking at selling them ourselves, what is the condition of each of them?
Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, do we own, or we?
Those are,
We can still sell it ourselves, even though it's leased.
I think both of them are still currently under lease.
They're leased, but it's that equity lease. Enterprise does auction it for us, so they
Right.
use their auction service, and
Yeah.
all those proceeds do come back to the town. It either goes to a down payment on the next lease,
Correct.
or they cut us a check.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if the market was there, because I know at one time we were selling them outright ourselves, because we were getting more per vehicle than the enterprise auction could bring.
And we could only do that if it was a town-owned vehicle, so in that case, because it's a lease, they would handle that auction for us.
Thank you.
But they do try to recommend timing and mileage.
Yes,
If they see a vehicle's maybe,
that's still Christie.
yes, that's still Chrissy, and they will notify us and let us know if it's good, bad, or we'll give us feedback.
Thank you.
I would like to ask why we're going to F-150s. I don't have a
Yeah.
preference. I'm just curious.
I am too.
Yeah.
I think it's important because we live on a coastal town. For every officer to have access to the beach in the event of a major incident. We have had in the past multi-victim water rescue. Obviously, at any one time, Chief Coffey can correct me if I'm wrong, but they have 3 to 4 vehicles out there. We should have at least 1 to 2, depending on how busy the weekend is, maybe 3. We can send those resources. If it comes during the week when, we may not have those available resources, we can at least step in and help transport in that situation.
What is the difference in price between a regular cruiser and the truck?
I didn't hear that.
Approved price and a pickup
That's right,
truck.
that number 50.
I think part of it has to do with the police pursuit package too. That's a factor as opposed to just an everyday person truck, but I'll let you answer.
That's absolutely correct. So what we found was a lot of your manufacturers have gone away from manufacturing police vehicle sedans. There are a lot of them are going to SUVs, into trucks. And so when we look at in terms of what do we lease, what's going to best fit our needs, and then what are we going to be able to resell it for, or turn that money around and put into another lease, the F-150 was the best choice. Last year, I believe, when we bought the Tahoes, that was the issue we ran into with the Tahoes. And those Tahoes have gone to patrol. They're actually going to give us the best resale value in the end. So also all these vehicles we're getting, except for the Wranglers, will be pursuit ready. Meaning that it adds that extra safety component for the officers if they have to get to a high-speed chase. We've also modified our pursuit policy. So we really prefer officers not to pursue unless it's a major felony.
Yeah, at least you're not asking for a Maserati.
We try to ask with them reasons.
I know we had some quotes on that, and I feel like the F-150 and the SUVs were not terribly far apart. I think the Tahoes were a little bit more expensive, but then they had the higher resale, if I recall.
That is correct.
The exact numbers.
We can get you the comparison on those. If I'm remembering correctly, I want to say the Tahoes were around 54 maybe, and the F-150s are around 50, and the Chargers were probably somewhere in the 40.
You can't get Chargers.
range.
I was gonna say the Chargers.
It's
are not
a
packaged.
SUV, like an Explorer or something, I think was the other one. But they
And
had a
SUVs are a
lower.
lot larger.
Yeah.
We can get more equipment and people and stuff in it.
Cause they do carry a lot of equipment.
And you could split, I'm sorry,
No, keep on.
you can split the hairs, you know. Durango, Explorer, F-150, we also have to look at height clearance to get onto the beach as well, and. You know, honestly, we feel like that the F-150 would be the most. The best vehicle we can use.
Regardless of what we get, I think there's great value in having them four-wheel drive equipped just for beach stuff.
Undercoated and stuff like that too.
Right, well, I think that may come standard, but we also partner with the car wash in Swansboro where all of our beach vehicles are cleaned regularly. So that the undercarriages can be washed and cleaned.
You can't use like community service workers.
You could, but the town, I think, moved away from that several years ago.
Full-time job, wasn't it, Kings?
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in that?
Yes,
That's
you are.
correct, and there were some concerns about having young children in the building with those particular workers with our preschool and after school. We had some
No.
severe complaints.
And some
accusations.
concerns about the community service workers working on police cars.
Yes,
Yeah,
And we don't have the capabilities to do an undercarriage wash.
I just think out the boxes, whatever, that's. I get it, I support whatever you guys need, I'm all about it. Public safety, fire and rescue, police. You guys put your necks out there, I want you to have the best.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
I would just echo Chief Panzarella's comment that the police department budget is very lean. And historically, it's been very. But we continue to do, I think, a great job with despite the lean budget, so. So we'll point that out.
Thank you, sir.
Because I didn't see like a new police department on here and make it easily usable.
I know, I was struck to that when we start talking about our 5-year plan. Anything else for Chief Panzarella?
Good job, chief, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, I left the book open for you to the fire department. I appreciate it. My colleague took his book and went home.
I loaned it to my other department. That's very nice.
Fire trucks on 81, all the way through 89. Take it away.
You want to lead?
So you take it away.
So, just going through the budget, we've tried to keep ours fairly lean as well. The capital stuff, I'll let you touch on more as far as scheduling as that capital stuff. As an interim, I'm just trying to keep on keeping on. So if you've got questions, I'll do what I can to answer.
I think the big item in here in the operating budget at least is the 3 new positions. There are currently 3 full-time positions and 3 part-time positions that provide service out of the Coast Guard station. And so that second staff member for that response, we would convert that from a part-time position to a full-time position. Gives the department the flexibility in scheduling and again, move us incrementally toward the future staffing for fire station to raise. The additional cost associated with that's about $74,000 plus or minus. As you heard me say at the beginning of the meeting, whenever we open future fire station 3, we will need a total of 6 more full-time positions. So incrementally moving us in that direction. It also, we've had some turnover in the fire department in recent months as well, and so the more full-time people you have, obviously, the more flexibility you've got on those things as well, but that's a key decision, I think, that's contributing to the tax increase that we discussed, the half cent. Beyond that, I think the operating budget's probably business as usual for the most part, in the fire department. One thing that you will see in there is, Station 1 roof replacement. There was $62,000 requested for that. We need to do that very much, would like to do that. But again, in the grand scheme of balancing everything, something had to give. And as we'll talk about when we get to the capital plan, rectification is to proceed with a renovation expansion of Fire Station 1 sometime in the next 3 to 4 years. And so try to hold out a little bit more with Band-Aids and bear that expense at this point in time. So did I miss anything? No, whatever.
No, I don't know. I know that Chief had also recommended a fire marshal position, and we didn't put it in this budget immediately, and I know that's important as the department gets bigger and that change command, span of command. He's recommending that, so that would be something that the board would want to look to in future years potentially, and help focus, I think. And I'm probably speaking way out of turn, but I think you were trying to also split function with focus on maybe the EMS side and then also the fire.
Absolutely, the distribution of workload at the top, trying to separate those out from the EMS side of the house over into the fire prevention, inspections, and community risk reduction is a big portion of that job. Plan review for a commercial building in the future. We don't really touch on the residential side as far as inspections go, but definitely on the commercial side, all of those have to be plan review. So having a 9 to 5, somebody that could be in the department to take and field those calls from John when that inspection comes due. So just another facet of that inspections process that you were trying to highlight on earlier.
Yeah, and so I think it'd be a great position for us to add at some point in time, right? You essentially have your chief, and you kind of have 2 deputy assistant chiefs, one kind of more on the EMS side of the house, one more on the fire side of the house. It would be I think a really helpful addition, but the cost associated with that probably all means probably somewhere in the $130,000-$140,000 range. We have benefits and so forth. And again, one of those things I'd love to do, but we've got to balance everything out. And so that may be something to consider going forward.
We've talked a lot about fire lately, so I don't know if I have any questions, in the past year. Good, let's conversation.
I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight that you had shared with us, the importance of us being aware right now too, is looking forward on the CIP. With our recent experience with the 2 engines that have been on order from Pierce, you let us know that we have fire engine 1 out on the horizon, and we may need to make a commitment for an order in the near future because it's the 24 to 36
Production time.
Longer than that. So
Longer than that,
we're
so
looking at a 30 to 48 month lead time from the time you place it on to the time that truck is delivered. We're doing the same thing with that once it's right now. So if you're gonna get one at that 15 or 16-year replacement schedule, then now is probably the time to go ahead and to order that. The payment wouldn't be due until the truck was received.
And so we don't have that in this budget per se, but I thought that we might want to introduce a capital project ordinance for that, and then get authorization to order and work through that in the upcoming months. So, but it is in the CIP. Kind of want to highlight that importance.
Yeah, so the budget impact associated with that, those fire engines are not cheap. We are projecting financing that. And we are looking at those debt service payments coming on in the year 2030, basically 4 years from now. So it's not a budget impact in the current year, but certain point, as they mentioned, we need to order it, and you'll be on the hook for that. So.
Frank, on Fire Station 2, it's what, 3.5 million? And that's funded exclusively with the what, FEMA 428. And we're certain that that's a guaranteed grant coming in.
Yeah, high confidence that we've got sufficient FEMA funds to cover that, and we've got a little bit of a cushion, as we talked about last week, that we may want to add some things back or the scope changes in some minor way. So feel really confident that there won't be any general tax revenues going to construction. Now, when it comes to building Fire Station 3 or doing a renovation and expansion of Fire Station 1, in the capital plan, we plug those in fiscal 2020 to 29. Make sure I'm telling you correctly here. So we plugged in the Fire Station 1 renovation expansion in 28-29, and also the construction of Fire Station 3 in 28-29. And I would say to you at this point in time, those are really just kind of placeholders, right? To get you all thinking about that, communicate that we're going to work toward these things. You'll see in the capital improvement plan that for Fire Station 3, for example, we plugged in the same $3.5 million expense. And we plugged in as a placeholder, $2.5 million grant funding. So our intent is to work with Representative Carnes and Senator Sanderson and try to secure some state funding to assist with this. Whether or not we'll be successful in that, who knows, and who knows if they'll even be our representatives at that point in time. There was a similar amount provided for the Morehead City Fire Station that was just opened up recently. I don't know the specific details on the ultimate source of those funds, but there was an awful lot of COVID money floating around over the last several years and infrastructure money floating around. So that may very well have been federal money that came to the state that they redirected. Needless to say, I think it behooves us to work with our elected leaders at the state level and try to secure funding for the fire station. So we plugged in $2.5 million of state funding. We plugged in $1 million that we would issue debt for in fiscal 28-29. Debt service wouldn't come on until fiscal 29-30. And then again, depending on whatever decisions you all make in the coming years, that may be bumped up, that may be pushed back some. Laura has tried to set it up on a schedule so that when some debt service comes off for some other things, it makes it a little bit easier for us to accomplish that. But I think the truth of the matter is that absent significant outside funding, you're looking at a tax increase at some point down the road to fund those things. So those are key decisions. The $2 million for Fire Station 1 expansion renovation, again, similar mindset, is kind of a placeholder. My vision for that, which others may or may not agree with. I think the old EMS station is a good, solid building. It looks very nice and represents the town well. It's now 18 years old, just about. I think we opened in 2008. My thought is to demolish the existing Fire Station 1 and build a new, very large metal building expansion off of the old EMS station, and then just reroute the driveway that goes down to Public Works to the far eastern side of that facility. And just based on all the conversations I've had with steel building contractors and DR Reynolds and other folks over the last few months, probably could do something like that, and then maybe convert the existing bays at the old EMS station into bunk rooms or office space, and probably still have some of those living quarters in the new metal building. But again, it's a placeholder just to get you all thinking about that. In my mind, if we put a large metal structure attached to that to become the bay area for Fire Station, we'll probably with 4 bays, maybe 5 bays in that facility. We certainly would give it a nice, attractive facade and basically try to mimic the appearance of the other buildings that we've got in town. So those are key decisions for you all. You don't have to decide those today, but you need to be thinking about these things. Trying to get it on your radar screen. In terms of the staffing, you don't project the need for additional staffing to operate Fire Station 2 a year from now or so when it's completed. We will, like I said, we will need to add 2 additional full-time people per shift When we opened Fire Station 3, so that's 6 personnel. That's $600,000, maybe a little more, to be depending on your tax rate at that time, so. And then, of course, I'm sure Chief Coffey would tell you, I'm sure Chief Parker would tell you, with NFPA standards and other evolving requirements, they would love to have more than 4 people on duty at each station going forward, but we're pretty lean.
Okay.
Thank you, Will.
What do you all think? I mean, is Fire Station 3 a top priority? Is Fire Station 1, should we not even be including that in the capital plan at this point in time? I mean, again, it really depends on your vision for the town. Our job is to help you develop that and figure out how to pay for it.
When I look at this, there's a lot of need coming up in the next 4 years. And so this tax increase we're trying to do now is gonna get even worse.
If you do everything in this capital plan, we're essentially projecting that your tax rate will go up to about 12.5 cents at the end of that 5-year period, give or take. And so with this budget, if you adopted it exactly as it's written, it'd be 11 cents. So then these are the key decisions for you all to make.
Was it about 45 million capital costs for in 5 years?
Yeah, but keep in mind that 28 million of that is the beach nourishment project that we're looking at doing this coming winter or the following. So the balance of the projects is about 17 million plus or minus.
I feel like it should remain in there because it's just like with the police station, we've let it go too far too long. And we got to keep these things on our radar and keep the focus on them if we're ever going to take care of them.
But the police station's not really included in anything right now.
So the police station.
No, it is, and I'm
Yeah.
suggesting that it should be.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Actually, I misspoke. So by the time the 5-year period's up, it's right around 13 cents. So you're looking at basically another 2 cents on it.
So I just need a little history here. So it used to be up to 16.5 and then we dropped to 10.5. And I guess that's because of the property reevaluations. We didn't want everybody to go into sticker shock, but now we're facing raising it back up to get these things done. And I don't know, at that time, that was probably in my mind too much of a drastic drop at one time, but I understand what was done. But I don't want to put future boards in a mess where the tax increases become a lot. I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now. It's not a lot right now, but all these things we want to do and take care of that we have to.
And that's exactly why we go through this exercise with
Right.
you, so that you can be thinking about these things, so that when the time comes, you may be completely comfortable with that, or you may want to adjust in some other way. The other thing that we all know is that I guarantee you there'll be more things y'all are gonna want to do going forward. It's just human nature. So, but with regard to the rate and the revaluation, so in North Carolina, there's state law that says when you complete a revaluation, you have to tell the public what the revenue neutral tax rate is, the rate that generates the same amount of property tax revenue that you collected under the old values. And so, you know, for example, last year, the revenue neutral rate was about 9.25 cents, maybe 9.29, I think was the exact number. And the rate that was adopted was 10.5, right? So there was an increase above revenue neutral. And so, whenever they have the value have gone sky high in our community, so that brought the rate way down. I hope we don't get back to 16.5, but
Yeah.
really it's going to depend on what your priorities are and what decisions you make over the next 5 years. So
We're not obligating a future board because they can always change it.
Right. Yeah.
Did some of the, what we'll get to in a little bit too is, you know, in 2 years, the McLeansville Park debt service will drop off, so that'll free up something.
Yeah.
So that we can finance maybe a fire engine or, and then, in 5 years, the land at Pebble Beach will drop off. And so we do have that factored in the 5-year forecast, but, that's helpful to know that the debt isn't wherever, you know, we'll get those paid off and. But hopefully that's helpful to look at that long-term planning.
And that's really the trick, right? To try to level out the expenses as best you can and move the community forward and keep the cost of government relatively stable.
Yeah.
I mean, the fire stations are a service identified need in town, and so I mean, that's easier, but do we have a debt service, threshold or like yellow light, red light? What's that threshold?
The LGC section, right?
Well, I was gonna say our fiscal policy.
Yeah, that's what I was
15%.
trying to say. So we have a board adopted fiscal policy, obviously adopted assumed by prior boards. I don't know if y'all have amended it while I was away, but essentially what it says, I believe it's 15% of our operating budget. No more than 15% of the operating budget can go toward debt service. And so we're right at about 5 to 6% projections. And honestly, I would recommend that we never get close to the 15%.
Yeah,
We're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
There's also a state law that says your outstanding debt cannot exceed 2% of your assessed valuation. If we ever get to that number, you should fire me and all of you at the same time. It's a ridiculous number.
Have we ever had an incident where there was a grant failure, where the grant fell through? And contingencies or anything in case that should happen?
I don't recall anybody pulling the rug out from underneath of us on a grant. I'm concerned about the FEMA 428 money only because things are so unpredictable, and
That's kind of what I was thinking about.
it's been so long.
That's the whole one right there.
So let me pause you there for 1 second, just because we've basically allocated $3.5 million for FEMA money for this Fire Station 2 project. If God forbid, next week the federal government says, "Hey, we can't have that money," all indications are it's there for us. That's what Laura and we continue to hear back from them. But let's just say that they yank the rug out from underneath of us next week. You all would need to decide whether or not to cancel the project altogether or to issue the debt to fund that project. And probably over a 20-year period, you're probably looking at a half cent on your tax rate, would be my guess, give or take, if you finance it. So, but to answer your question directly, I don't recall anybody pulling the rug out from underneath of us.
And I was gonna touch on that too, a little bit on FEMA stuff.
Just the tax, once it's on there, it doesn't go away. We're talking about permanent taxes, 0.5% increase, because it's probably just gonna go after that to go service this other emergency needs that we need, services that we need. So it's on there. It won't sunset or go away.
Most of the time, that's what happens, yes. Sometimes there are decreases. Anything else from an operating standpoint, Will, that you think the board needs to be aware of?
Not particularly. New chief starts June the 1st.
2 weeks.
Appreciate you stepping up and holding down for it. Well, good job, thanks.
Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Will.
think I start on page 102.
Get away.
Okay. So, you'll find on page 103, the budget notes there, as previously discussed, the funding of $105,000 for the replacement of 3 beach walkways. Trying to bring us back on schedule. That would be, Santa Maria, 8th Street and 9th Street. Just for historical purposes, just so you know, we annually rate all of our walkways. And so I've strategically chosen a 5 to 8 year plan of which walkways we'd replace should we be able to maintain this $105,000 so the material cost doesn't go up. So I have to consider the length of each walkway in this selection. But you can see, well, I don't think it's 8th, 9th, and Santa Maria are all rated a 1. So we're constantly making repairs to those just for safety concerns. So we would be able to replace all of those in this budget. And then the next item is
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about the beach access walkways during the first round of beach nourishment, the majority of the walkways in the numbered streets on the east end were constructed at that time because there was a new dune, we had to get over the dune. So a lot of those are simply dune crossovers. They're not a walkway to the beach. Are they being rebuilt any differently? And if not, could we consider future replacements being extended? Because currently on all of those, or the majority of those that were built during that period, you're walking in sand for a minimum of 50 yards, 30 to 50 yards. And then you're getting down onto the beach itself, which you can't expect anything beyond that point. But it just seems that if we're making these investments, we need to try and enhance the functionality of each one of those walkways.
Absolutely. That's something that Frank and I actually discussed when we just completed the most recent ones. They did not need to be extended necessarily, but that calculation has been kept in mind moving forward. And it'll obviously depend on where the sand is, you know, hopefully we maintain everything that we have.
Right.
But each year I'll evaluate that before we make the final selections.
Because a lot of those on the east end are simply flat.
Right.
I mean, it's not a matter of having to build a massive cross section with braces.
Yes.
It would simply be
Just an extension.
without even rails, because you wouldn't have to go above 30 inches on
As
either
long as you have
side.
the platform, right? Great point, but yes, absolutely. Sure. So the next item is, if you recall from your April board meeting, we did apply for the grant funding for the Channel Drive extension. Town match would be just over $26,000, and hopefully we would be awarded just over $76,000 to complete that extension and the parking upgrades. I should hear by the end of the month if we've made it to round 2. We have to submit the rest of the application, and then we would hopefully know by the fall whether or not we were granted those funds. Incorporated into my budget is the fireworks display, bringing it back at Bogey and Lapeer. So happy to help with that and host. And then Laura had mentioned how that $15,000 reserve is marked in the Parks and Rec budget. So if you have any questions to that. And then all we're really asking for, other than walkway replacements, is we need a new mower, which is very common. The one that we have right now that we're replacing is 8 or 9 years old, I believe, and we've made many repairs to it, and it's well overdue for a replacement.
Sandblasting motors.
Yes, exactly, they are. I would answer any questions you might have.
The beach access walkway replacements, so that is an additional amount this year. So we have 105,000 in there. We had 60,000 last year, so something is happening.
3.
And in the capital plan, we temporarily plugged in 150,000 in here forward, so you know they're not cheap.
What about the stuff for like kids, like splash pad and, you know, skateboard park? I put it, even though that's something I like, put it at a lower priority, but the splash pad and the rubberized playground surface, is that pretty? I would think that's pretty important for safety.
We plugged in the rubberized playground surface at Blue Heron Park for next year at about $190,000 general fund revenues. Hopefully we'll have the funding available in the fiscal 27-28 budget to do that. So that's in the capital plan with general revenue. The splash pad and the skate park are plugged into the 4th and 5th year of the capital plan. And realistically, in my view, the only way that we would construct those is if we can secure significant grant funding to do that. So the capital plan reflects grant funding. Certainly, if you all want to do it with general tax revenues, we can do that. But I think those skate parks and splash pads are very, very expensive. We're going to have to get some grant funding to do those realistically, in my view.
We're gonna have to identify where those would be located first.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a policy that, you know, no grant, no go, you know, on some of these projects and stuff, just to make sure that we don't keep increasing that debt service and increasing the tax rate.
I think that's probably the de facto policy, has been the de facto policy for those things.
I think to Lisa's point, that where are you gonna put it is the limiting factor.
Yeah, at a staff level, I can tell you that if there's any grant funds available, we always apply and go after it as aggressively as we can.
And then, I guess, I was looking for some more like, programs that try to promote year-round tourism, stuff like that, like, and more stuff for senior citizens. We have an aging population. I'm part of it. So, just so, and we heard that, from a couple of citizens over the last year or so. They spoke and just said, it'd be nice to have more stuff for seniors, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the kids got a playground and stuff like that, but certainly, well, we can do to enhance that for the youth. I think we do pretty good there, but senior programs, something like that in the future.
Sure.
Where were we on your idea of
Oh, the community center there, I don't,
the sheriff's?
yeah,
office?
taking that office, I don't think anything about it.
Frank, have you talked to
Yeah.
them at all about that?
I have not,
Yeah,
not since we talked about it.
That seems like a pretty quick, easy fix to use that space as maybe a senior center.
I'm certainly happy to have that conversation with them.
yeah. Well, are there any funds built in for a quick refresh? I mean, it won't require a lot.
I put it in the 28.
28?
We put it in 28.
Okay.
Just to balance.
Yeah, and I think that's.
And that was a guess on dollars too. We didn't have from quotes or anything.
Yeah. Will it be in conjunction with a little bit of a police department refresh in 28? If we're probably saying that.
That was based on the workshop feedback that
Okay.
you all had provided, but
Yeah.
at least in this draft, that's
Mhm.
where it's at right now. So it wasn't forgotten, but it is in this.
Yeah, I saw that for next year.
So there's not any grants out there to upgrade like a police facility or anything like? It's all on
Typically,
our own dime.
yeah, typically not, it's hard to get them for new buildings, but you have a much better chance for a new building than foundation refresh.
And I've been told by Celeste, it's, when she asks for money for us, it's difficult because we do have such a low tax rate. It's hard for her to push. So, I mean, not that she doesn't or can't, but it's just perception.
Something I'd like to see like in the future for our parks too, like McLean Spell Park is like having a guided pass through there with kiosks explaining like what the species are, talking about habitat that lives out there. What you can expect, not expect in this area. Even the geography out there, those are old relic prehistoric dunes out there that are discovered with trees and stuff now. I think we need to educate people like that, but you got to have a little kiosk and stuff like that. I don't mean like digital or anything, but just placards, like they got the aquarium up there. You walk through the trails. So
We have them in Emerald Woods and actually we're installing the exact same ones in the next few weeks. They're already on order and coming in. So yeah, to identify species and certain plants.
Candace, do you all have sometimes I hear from people that it's not kept, those trails in there aren't kept clear, or do you monitor those?
We do. We walk the parks at least once a week and then
Okay.
when we get reports, there's branches down, I'll send them in whether it's a weekend or not and clear it. I mean, the root system kind of just is what it is, but down branches and any kind of debris or anything dangerous, then absolutely.
I did see the school bus being planned for years out, right? So that after school and things. Because I know they've been riding on that activity bus a lot this year.
Yes, so we fortunately have made repairs to the bus. She's running pretty good. She's running at 55 miles an hour so that we can make it to Wilmington and Newburgh for summer day camp. But so we're fingers crossed that this one gets us through for a little while.
Yeah, I saw it.
We're calling her Shanita because she needs a lot of stuff. But one of those things you do what you gotta do to get us through. But right now she's doing okay. So
I like that.
yeah.
Enjoy that now. Kid enjoy.
Yeah, that's right now. Anything else for me?
Appreciate the job you're doing. It's doing a real good job.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ken.
Yes, thanks.
Right.
Like,
Okay, and time.
Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna go through the other budgets, so I'll start with or no, excuse me, governing body, we'll just go in order. So governing body is, page 61 is, there, and that, just covers, this board and related expenses like legal advertising. It's a relatively flat budget, we don't have a lot of ups and downs in there. We do our public service communications out of there. A good example of public service communications is the beach safety at the movie theater, that comes out of this budget. So looking at trends, dropped travel and training, we weren't using quite as high as we may have in the past, so we dropped that down. We dropped the board book program, that was a subscription that wasn't being fully utilized. We went back to paper binders and copies and stuff. So that's relatively flat, but whenever we can find some savings, even if it's $8,000, for example, we dropped it down. There are some copy expenses that's actually borne in the administrative department, so if anybody has any extra binders or anything, we gladly will take them back because we will recycle them and check on. Yeah, that's right. So thank you for that. If you have some spares, we appreciate it. And I'll probably fly as I usually do, so just please interrupt me. I will be done in 3 minutes. But they're relatively small budgets, and so if there's no questions on governing body, I'm happy to go on with the legal budget. Legal is really the Carolina Law Group, and this does cover normally just our normal routine legal services. This year we did have some extraordinary activity. We had the family condemnation process that was a lot more legal effort. And then we also have the banks, so that there's some little extra services there. So budgetarily, just best we can do because there are unknowns that we don't know about. Try to do it by trend, and we just increased it a very small amount by 5,000. So that's that budget. And then moving on to administration, pages 65 to 69. The biggest, probably the details are on page 68, but the biggest decrease in that budget was to reduce the salary related expenses for the public information officer. We did change positions. We have our IT specialist and assistant town planner. We moved him into the administrative department for reporting. And so he will still do assistant town planner, but sometimes with those split positions, we'll pick a department, and so we moved him over here into admin. And let me see what else noteworthy in there. One thing we did do in administration is we did request new carpeting or flooring, whether it be LVP or maybe a combination of something, but we mentioned earlier, this building is 17 years old and we're starting to see some holes in the carpet and where you get those little bumps. We don't want anybody. So got some quotes. We were going to try to incorporate it if we could, but that was one of the things that we said, we'll try to stretch it out one more year and try to get it next year. So that was kind of a bigger ticket item. Those don't happen a lot in the admin building. Let's see. And I'll pause for a second if anybody has questions, otherwise I'll keep flying through the budgets. Non-departmental is a little bit further back. Non-departmental is really labeled very accurately. It's basically anything that's townwide that doesn't really make sense to try to get it spread across every department. Postage is in there, for example. The biggest ticket is our townwide property liability and workers' comp insurance premiums. Those have been getting heavy increases every year. Property liability was big this year. I think it's just a function of insurance and claims, and not necessarily at Emerald Isle, but it just keeps going up. So we're monitoring that. We did budget for it because I believe it is going to be higher this year based on the feedback we got from the North Carolina League of Municipalities. That's who our coverages are with. when we do have a workers' comp claim or a bigger one, sometimes our workers' comp will go up and then it'll come back down as if we're, staying safe and not having any claims. So that was a bigger note, most notable increase in non-departmental. One of the things that we're doing as our quotes are coming back, we're also looking at maybe can we increase our deductibles? Does it make sense? Maybe drop the premiums, and so we are looking at that. The other costs that kind of went up proportionately, it's not a direct increase or an increase without a revenue, but Carteret County Property Tax Office does our collections for us. They collect for all property taxes, solid waste fees, motor vehicle taxes. So those fees are in there, and as our taxes go up, that had to go up a little bit too. So that's in there. And last but not least, important one is the reserve for the salary study. We had reserved some monies last year and then we increased it this year. So that's an increase in this budget that we're reserving. And I know Frank's gonna talk about that a little bit more. We've got the study back and then we want to start rolling that out. He did a little bit so far this year and let's do some more. I won't steal your thunder and then I'll let you finish on that. So I'll pause on nothing more until if you have any questions.
Yeah, so this is a good
segue.
to talk about that. So, as I shared last week, as you've seen in the budget, there is a 2.5% cost of living increase included for every town employee, full-time, part-time, in the budget. The change in the CPI as of March was 3%, so we're just slightly less than that. And the total cost of that is right around $190,000. So that cost is spread out among all the town department budgets, based on the employees. There's $175,000 in the non-departmental budget that it's simply a pot of money that we would utilize to make market adjustments based on the results of the say classification study. Got a draft sitting on my desk right now. Need to go through it a little bit further. And hopefully we will be presenting that to you at your June 9th meeting. That study basically it looks at 15 different peer organizations, both in our area and a few other beach towns as well, and makes recommendations for new salary ranges for each of the positions that we have in the town government. What that does not do is it doesn't say person Jane is getting X% or Steve is getting X% or whatever the case may be. It establishes the new ranges. And then it will be incumbent upon primarily me and Lindsay and Laura and the appropriate department head to take this pot of money and allocate it based on results to the individuals based on how many years of service, what experience levels they have, those sorts of things. And so that $175,000, again, it's not going toward part-time people, but for example, it's going to be right around 3% of our payroll, a little bit less than that. And so that's probably not going to get the job done. But again, it's all a big balance, and we started out with 200,000 in there, trying to make the numbers work. We knocked it down to 175. And I know there's been some question about this, but my intent is to focus on police and fire first, because I think those are the ones we struggle with the most to effectively retain and recruit new people for that. If we get the job done and we got money left over, certainly be moving on to the other town departments. If we don't have enough to get it done in police and fire, then you'll be asking for some additional money in next year's budget, as well as for other departments. I did recently, probably in 2 different installments over the course of the last 6 months or so, simply provided a $2,000 increase for everyone in public works and Parks and Rec, to try to address concerns there, get ahead of the game a little bit. Also, because with the change in health insurance last year, those folks, quite frankly, were hurt more by that than other employees. And I want our folks to get ahead and feel good as things go forward. So that's what's in there, 175. Doesn't have to be that. It can be 350, it can be 50, it can be 0. But that's the strategy that we took. Again, it's a big balance and trying to make it all work. And there's plenty of things that I think all of us would like to do that aren't in there. You just have to make choices and depend on your values, ultimately depend on the 6 of your values decision. So that
there's 175,000 allocated for police and fire incremental increases
Well, it's for the whole organization.
Right, I get that. Okay, there's 175,000 for whatever. Currently, we're proposing a 2.5% COLA increase to all employees, full and part-time. And for someone who's making 200,000, that would be a significant amount.
Sure.
For someone who's making 40,000, that's an extra tank of gas. Pretty much.
If I'm making 40,000, it's roughly $1,000.
Right. I would prefer, since we're not gonna get there all the way with 175,000 on implementing the pay study results. I would prefer to see us pull that 76,000 that it would take to go another 1% towards an increase for all town employees. That would leave us $1,000 short, and I'm sure you could find that somewhere.
So let me make sure I'm following.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that,
Reducing to 100,000,
okay, and then doing a higher cost of living for 3%?
that 3.5%.
Uh,
76,000 is one.
Yeah. We can absolutely do that. If that's what you all would like to do, we can absolutely do that.
Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, you would provide a 3% cost of living increase and you'd have $100,000 to implement the pay plan initially, right? And we'll see how far that goes.
The 3.5% increase. We're
Cost-
currently
The cost of living increase would be 3.5%, so everyone theoretically would get that.
correct. You
That's,
said 3% is what I'm
I'm
asking.
sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
It's 3.5. You would be left with $100,000 to implement the pay classification study.
Yes,
And so clearly that's just gonna not go as far as 175,000 would, and we'd have to probably keep working on it.
and we would, but retention is far less challenging than recruitment.
Sure.
And if we can invest more in what's already tried, proven, and highly beneficial, I don't see where a little bit extra is gonna help us with recruitment.
Yeah, so fair enough. I would argue that the pay and classification study is as much about retention. as making adjustments to certain people who are already working for the town that the study identifies maybe are a little below market. So that hopefully they don't leave and go to Pine Shore, Warren City, wherever they go. Both are important, don't get me wrong. So we can absolutely do that. If that's what you all would like to do. That's an easy change to make.
So I understand, do these figures include or not include the extra 28% fringe? That would get added on top of the salary?
So we had a 2.5% increase in here, cost of living increase.
Yeah.
And that's roughly $191,000. That includes all the fringe,
Okay.
percentage driven. The 175 is just simply a pot of money,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And so, but there's gonna be salary increases and percentage driven benefits that come out.
That additional 1% would be covered in that 76,000.
That includes.
It costs
the
76,000 for a 1%, and that would be all inclusive.
So you're saying you want everyone to benefits and then use the extra pot.
Correct.
We can.
Are you trying to get everybody to what point on these salary scales? Mid range? I mean, because it's usually minimum, mid, max. Where are you trying to get everybody?
Yeah, so I think initially the goal for the study is to make sure that our salaries are competitive with our peer groups, so that we can retain the folks we have, recruit new people. The decision on where a particular individual falls within that range, I think is a deeper analysis that again will be done by me and Lindsay and the corporate department head and help from Laura to set them at the right location. And so there are people who've been here for 15, 20 years, there are people who've been here for 15, 20 months, right? And so that's the part you have to go through. That's not what this study is. This study is simply saying this range is competitive with Moorhead or Swansboro or whoever.
And that will be after we maybe approve this budget. You'll have the time to dig into that.
That's
after.
correct, yeah.
So you're trying to take seniority into account as well when you figure out.
Yeah, I think that's all part of it, right? I think it's seniority, I think it's experience, I think it's qualifications, certifications, things like that, to make that judgment about where that person belongs.
And Alicia, you want to go above the standard 3%, you want to go 3.5.
That's correct.
How much is?
And 38,000 would be a 0.5% to take it to 3.
So whatever you do on a cost of living or a market adjustment, the health insurance is a flat cost. It's, we budgeted 12,100 per employee. That won't change regardless of what you do on salary increases. But because retirement and 401k and FICA and all that is based on percentage of salary, that's factored in. So if we take the 76,000 and take it up to 3.5%, the benefits are covered in it. So it's all in, all inclusive.
Right, because that would have been going to another employee anyway.
Yeah, and I guess it really depends on what you think is most important and what your philosophy is, right? So last year, the board allocated funding for the pay and classification study because they want to make sure that we're competitive with our peer groups. Absolutely important goal to have. If you take more money and you give it to everybody in the form of a cost of living increase, you're essentially saying that you value that equity among all the employees more than the market competitiveness, right? On a very nuanced scale, but
And last year
what you all want to do.
Right, last year we hadn't lost a dozen people in a 12-month period. And this year we have.
And that may not been attributed to salaries though.
It may not have been.
There have been other things, other factors.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer on this, right? It really kind of depends on what you want to accomplish and what you think is more important, right? Obviously, if you just give 3.5% cost of living increase to everyone, regardless of whether they've been here 20 years or 2 years, right? That's one value. If you say, look, I want to identify the people who are maybe out of whack with the market and have more experience or better qualifications, that's another value. Neither one is wrong. It really
I'd like to do both, but we can't afford it.
So
Yeah.
what is our, when we look at this total budget, what is our percentage of salary and benefits?
It's on page, let's see, wait, it's in the, towards the beginning of the expenditure account, that is on page
58.
58. So, oh, this, yeah, right, yes. No, I don't have I have to get my calculator, I apologize.
I can tell you real quick, so.
I was thinking it was just the increased percentage.
So roughly 60%. If you take the salary and benefit number divided by the total expenses, so roughly 60%. It's a little bit skewed, right? Because we contract for solid waste services, so all those salaries are included in the operating line. So it's not a perfect representation because you have those things going on.
What is benefits? What percentage is benefits?
Benefits alone,
Yeah,
you know, you mean in terms of the budget or on an
what
individual
percentage
basis?
of the budget are benefits?
Okay, so it's roughly 17% plus or minus.
Right.
And you got to keep in mind too that the salaries line that you see on page 58, that's got all the full-time salary, it's got all the part-time salary, it's got the stipends provided to the board. It's a very small number, obviously. And then the benefits is the health insurance, which is only going to the full-time people. It's the FICA Medicare for everybody, full and part-time, and then for the full-time people, it's the retirement and the 401k and things like that. So it's important to know what's in those numbers, but roughly the benefits are 17% of the town budget.
The increase in benefits or the total cost?
The total, grand total. If you just simply look at that benefit number divided by the total budget, it came out to roughly 16.7%.
So what was,
But on an individual employee basis, you take the salary, right, and you multiply that by roughly 27-28% because of FICA, retirement, 401k. And so if it's $100,000 employee, you got $28,000, the benefits plus $12,000 for the health insurance. So $40,000 worth of benefits. So when you look at that in the total compensation, because it's a full-time employee.
what do we have, like 175,000 going towards salary adjustments?
In the recommended budget, there's 175. What Alicia recommended or suggesting is that we make that 100 and take the other 75,000 and give everybody a higher cost of living increase instead of 2.5%, make that 3.5%.
Do you have a sense based on the study, taking the more targeted approach, how many people might be affected by that? out of the population?
Yeah, I don't know for certain yet. I mean, there are, as you would imagine, different positions have different percentage variances, either high or low. I certainly don't expect to reduce anyone's salary at the
Right.
department efforts. You know, you'll see the study, but there's, you know, some that are just off by a couple percent. There's some that are off by maybe 8 or 9%.
I like the idea of doing the most good, but I also know we did the study to target individual circumstances. So I don't want to get too far away from solving the problem we set out to solve by spreading it out more broadly. So where's the balance between those two? Is what's in my mind.
Both of you are right. Neither one of you are
Yeah.
wrong. I think it depends on what approach you want.
But I don't know how many people or how far does 175K get us to solving the problem we set out to solve.
I think it's a meaningful non-start. I think it's gonna make a pretty big difference for us. I don't think it's the end be all,
Yeah.
but you know, like for example, and the reason that the study is held up right now, part of it is just because there've been so many other high profile things going on this week. Part of it is because salary study is looking at salary ranges for, say, Emerald Isle, Swansboro, Pine North Shores, Morehead City, etc. That's pretty easily accessible information, pretty easy to make comparisons. For example, in the fire department, we have a bunch of additional add-on amounts that are provided to particular individuals that aren't reflected in our salary ranges or anybody else's salary. And all but maybe one or two of these other 13, 15 communities, they don't do that, right? So that's part of why we're taking a little more time on it, is just making sure that it's apples to apples. Because if you looked at it at face value, you may say, oh gosh, some fire positions are underpaid by X percent. You might say some are overpaid by X percent, but that doesn't even factor in those additional payments that we're paying, that at least the 15 communities we talked to, I think 13 of them don't have anything like that. So that's part of what we're taking our time on and going back and looking at.
And those are for
close.
like additional courses that they've taken or specialties, that type thing.
Yeah, there's a list of probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 different things where there's anywhere from 2.5% to 5% additional pay provided that we don't do in any other town department. And I think that's great. Like, it's great to reward people for taking the initiative and to being prepared to be a future leader and have extra skills for our people. But I want to make sure that we're being consistent across all departments, particularly police and fire. Those are the most equally comparable types of jobs. So
Yeah.
that's why it's kind of full up. So just a little sidebar there for you on that. I want every single person who works here to feel valued. I want every single person who works here to feel like they're getting ahead, right? And so it's important for us to treat people fairly. It's important to us from a selfish reason, just to remain competitive so we can keep good people and attract good people to come here. So I think that's honestly, that's your biggest challenge in the coming years, right? The inflation's going bonkers, the whole world's going nuts, essentially, right? And so that's the big challenge. That's what's going to drive your tax increases in addition to whatever project decisions you make going forward. So these are the things that you need to think about. The other thing I want to touch on real quick is the health insurance. So my entire career, to this day, till the day I hang it up, health insurance has always been my number one priority for the employees, because that in particular is where it hits the lower paid employees hardest. And so we've got a 21% increase in our premium plugged in. We've got an additional, roughly the equivalent of probably another 20% plus or minus, because a one-time credit was essentially removed, $100,000. So health insurance, just to keep what we have for everybody, is going up by $220,000 next year. And so when you divide that by our 76 full-time employees, that's roughly $3,000 per employee. But I put that in here because that's always my top priority. I want our staff to feel like they're covered with those things. And so, for example, when the League of Municipalities last year stopped providing health insurance for the town, the town, I think, did a great job and went out and got Blue Cross Blue Shield on board for a plan that was pretty similar, almost identical to what they had with the league. But there's always so many different nuances and differences in the thing. And we had employees in public works who immediately got hit with like an extra $1,000-$2,000 a year because the town did the best it could, did a great job, but there were some nuances. You can't ever get two policies exactly the same. And so that was part of the reason for that adjustment for those folks over the course of the last 6 months. I tell that to you because in the example of the $40,000 employee, and some of them have children coverage or they have spouse coverage. And if that premium goes up by $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year, and we've only given them $1,000 raise, well, they're not getting ahead. They don't feel any better. Then maybe they're going backwards and getting hurt. So to me, like my recommendation to you, whatever you do, the health insurance would be my recommendation to you to make sure you do the best job for our employees. We've even, Lindsay, Laura, and I, the consultant, we've had conversations, should we just offer dependent care coverage to all of our employees? Like I'm asking myself, like, what can we do to make Emerald Isle the absolute employer of choice for people, right? Like, what could we do that would make people say, man, I'm going to Emerald Isle. I don't want to go to Morehead for Pine Shores. Is it dependent coverage? Maybe crazy expensive, right? But really not fair across the entire organization. Some people have kids, some people don't. Some people's spouse has a job and has insurance, and some people don't, right? So we're trying to think of those kind of things to make it meaningful for our employees. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit right now. The health insurance is I hate the fact that it's $200,000 more. It's crazy.
I saw in here that the broker said not to, he didn't think he could get a better price. So I disagree with that. I think we need to. Maybe it's not this budget, but moving forward, we need to pursue that a little harder.
So we actually, as part of this process, and we had a lot of conversations about exactly that. There was a bit of a risk factor, right? Maybe we could have knocked it down another 1 or 2% or so, but there was a chance that we were not going to be able to knock it down at all. They started out at 26%. We got it down to the 21.4, I think it came out to. We also met with an agent who offers like these alternative plans, and you've probably heard of some of these things where the basic premise is that, quote, they do a better job of controlling costs and bringing in medical providers and basically providing them a lower payment for their services. And we looked at those things. We're going to keep looking at those kind of things going forward. But at the end of the day, that cost is being absorbed by someone. And a lot of times with those alternative plans, that cost gets shifted to the employee, right? And so that's the things we're balancing and trying to guard against.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I personally have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I haven't had an increase in 3 years. So, and my employer hasn't taken a big hit on that either. So I know it's not comparing apples to apples, but I just feel like with that $100,000 credit gone and then 21.4% increase seems just insane. But that it is the world we live.
It's absolutely insane.
I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure it is the best price, because that's an amazing benefit to give.
If they had to pay for that out of pocket,
Yes,
many probably just wouldn't have it.
because I still pay out of pocket. Like I pay toward my benefits that they're not fully covered. So most of us do, but yeah.
And I think, every employer, every politician at the federal and state level struggle with the same question.
Right.
It's just, everybody knows it's insane. No one can figure it out.
And I tell you, until a catastrophe hits your family, you don't even really appreciate just how much that insurance being there helps out. I mean, I can't even begin to express the joy it was covered, and I even have her under some of my insurance too under the state plan, but it's and still it's taxing on us even with all that. So that is a tremendous benefit, and like I'm glad you put that as a priority. That is huge. You never know, and I pray it never happens. So you don't have to use it, but with an aging population and as you get older, you never know each day what's going to happen that day. And it's there.
Did we offer like a option to pick up a critical illness, like an athletic policy?
We do offer
You
those,
did,
yeah,
okay,
they're
great.
paid for by the employee,
Right, okay.
but they're
good.
available.
Good.
Several of our employees take advantage. of
Oh, yeah.
those things.
Because they're cheaper.
They're
Go ahead, boy, and
They're smart to do.
So like, for example, if you all said, hey, sorry, we can't afford another 220,000 for health insurance this year. If you all said you gotta find some, we're not gonna do that, and we're going to reduce the tax rate back to 10.5. One of the ways that we would consider addressing that is we might shift more cost to the employee. Like, we might tell the employee, look, you're gonna have to bear an additional $1,000 in the premium or the deductible payments and so forth. And so we have 76 employees. You could get the $76,000 right there by just taking $1,000 off of the amount we provide for health insurance. Probably wouldn't be popular, but that would be fine. So somebody like me or Laura or the other folks sitting in this room, we'd be fine. But the people who make it $40,000, $50,000, so close to going to pay that price a little bit more. And so those are just all the things that we try to factor in to come up with hopefully decent plans.
Do you feel like at the administration level, the salaries are okay?
My gut tells me they are, yeah. I think
Because we're leaning toward giving everyone COLA and maybe we're not increasing salaries at a large percentage of it all at that level. I just haven't seen studies, so I don't know. So just trying to balance it all out.
Now, I mean, I'm going off of memory and studies not finalized, but there are some administrative positions that look like they're right in line, others that look like they're lagging.
So if everyone gets the cost of living, you make $100,000, that's a decent piece with the cost of living.
For sure.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, the other thing I'll tell you, so always try to set the COLA at the CPI change, right? And so CPI was had over 3% at March, right? We came in at 2.5 in part because we were also doing reasonably well on health insurance and reasonably well on the pot for the salary adjustments. But if you look at the April numbers, guess what? That percentage is closer to 4%. And you know what's happened in the last 6 weeks or so? Gas has gone on the roof. Those things. So, well, let me ask you all this. Are y'all wanting to make the change on the COLA? To get it up to 3.5%?
I do,
So, yeah,
but I can only speak for myself.
that's something y'all would like to do.
And
I think,
and you feel relatively comfortable that we can get the increases we need to make in salaries with that 100,000 that's left? We do that?
I don't think 175,000 can get the whole job done, to be honest with you. So obviously you have a lesser chance of doing 100,000. I can't tell you a definitive answer right
Yeah.
now, but my guess is by the time it's all said and done, if you implement every recommendation, it would be more than 175,000. Say that because that 175 itself comes out to about 2.5 to 3% for every employee in the organization. Not everybody's going to get the same amount.
What area is needing the priority attention for that?
Well, depends on what department you talk to. Every department will tell you it's theirs. But in my estimation, I think it's police, to a lesser extent fire, but I think it's primarily police, to be honest with you. Now, having said that, I'm sure I just probably upset someone else in a different department in the organization, right? Because it's human nature.
but you should be able to cover the police department with that 100.
I think that it's hard for me to give you a definitive
Yeah.
answer, right? I mean, it's because it's not done yet and we haven't got to that point.
Mhm.
So,
But we don't even know what we're paying a new chief is.
Good point.
yeah, that's right. And so just to put it in perspective, so we have a total of 22 authorized positions in the police department, right? So it's got $100,000 doing the simple math, you got $4,000 or $5,000 to give to each employee. Now, in reality, it didn't come. Just to give you some perspective on
Have we looked at any other innovative revenue streams like like we were talking about, looking at obtaining the parking situation, handling that internal, so the net proceeds would be 100% going back to the town. And you said that would generate, I forget what that exact number was. It was over 200,000 or something, I believe.
Well, it depends on how that all shakes out. You know, we'll be evaluating that this summer and bring a recommendation to you in the fall, but under the current contract, there's about $100,000 of operating expenses, just to maintain the system that we have through town parking. And then town's compensation is right around $100,000. So I'm talking rough numbers, but that's ballpark what the numbers are. So, you know, maybe there's a better scenario out there where we can recover that cost, or we can retain that revenue ourselves. You know, we'll be working on that this summer and fall.
And then could we disperse some of that funds into making salary adjustments or cost of living adjustments if we did, or would we need to reallocate that back toward tourism?
That has to be used for beach related, those park related, that were funded by Division of Coastal Management. They have to be used for that.
Yeah, but along the same lines, so like, for example, in the current year, you know, we had additional property tax revenue that we didn't anticipate. If there is something throughout the middle of 26, 27, where we have some additional revenue, absolutely, you all could allocate whatever it is for salary adjustments or really anything else you want. So we certainly can bring those things to you. And in terms of other revenue sources, it's probably not a popular one. You know, even though I like it myself, but I really think we need to be paving more streets than we're paving, right? You know, we got 46 miles of streets. If we pave 1.25 miles every year, you can do the math on how long those streets are going to last, right? And so there's authority in the general statutes to levy a special motor vehicle tax on every vehicle registered in Emerald Isle. And, you know, we probably could come up with something approaching $100,000 to put toward street resurfacing if you want. At the end of the day, a tax is a tax, right? It's another $25 or $30 that people in Emerald Isle will be paying. But there's those kinds of things that are out there. And I don't even know if I like that one myself, but I do think we need to do more paving in the future.
Yeah, I'm more toward like a user type fee, or something like that.
It's more the tourist. You can say it's the tourist fee because they're the ones putting the pressure on our services, not us that live here every day. But what would that be?
But
What are we missing?
I think that's absolutely true, but keep in mind that those tourists who are coming to Emerald Isle are paying the room occupancy tax that's funding our beach nourishment, the bulk of our beach nourishment efforts. They're also funding our tourism promotion efforts, which hopefully keeps people coming to Emerald Isle.
Sales tax.
But our sales tax revenue, we've got close to $3 million of sales tax revenue. They're paying sales tax on all those vacation rentals as well. They're paying, the people who own these homes that are renting out, those people are paying property taxes that factor into our roughly $6-7 million of property tax revenue. The reason we have a high level of solid waste service is because you've got roughly 5,000 homes that aren't used the full year paying the same $325 or $335 or $360 fee. So there are lots of ways I think that people maybe don't realize the visitors are really contributing a significant amount to our community services. And so
the sales tax is huge. I mean, they pay for, you know,
ABC tax.
ABC revenue.
Sales tax, for saying it's very good.
So, and honestly, I would argue that we're the people who are lucky enough to live here year round. We are just so absolutely blessed to have all that outside money providing all the great things we enjoy in Emerald Isle, because we're basically operating like a city of 40 or 50,000 people. And because of that, we've got a great community center. We've got this great solid waste service. We've got great bicycle paths. We've got all the other things that we do that take away all them visitors. I can guarantee you, we don't have half of it.
But raising a fee, I mean, a minimal fee, not very nominal. Is that really going to stop anyone from coming to vacation here?
I don't think so,
I
but
mean, I never checked occupancy tax and out of Mexico, I would go out there to go stay in a cottage for a week, to go to a surfing tournament or something. I just never even considered it. I just paid it and.
well, the room tax, so there's state law that limits it to 6%, per county, per jurisdiction. That's combined, county and the cities within a county. So we're at the 6% max right now. It would take an act of the General Assembly to raise that. It would also take an act of the General Assembly to change what that money can be used for.
Well, like for instance, the beach driving permit fees. I mean, there's a way to sort out from the Carter County persons getting the passes versus out of town, tourism.
They're doing that, aren't we?
Yeah, that's already being done.
We're already doing.
Yeah,
But you also,
What's the rate versus someone from out of town?
that's right.
that's on page
40.
on page 149. So if you're an Emerald Isle resident, it's $50, or property owner, you're $50, part of a county 125, other station 200. And so that, that's something you all may want to think about. I mean, you may want to increase those fees, but you run into the same backstop of making sure that the fees that we generate are used for those services that are provided. So we have to go through analysis on parking fees and beach driving fees and building permit fees, all those kind of things. You can't just raise the fees just to raise additional general money. You have to raise it for that particular service.
Put it back in the tourism. Yeah.
I would say tourism, 100%. I mean, it's also maintenance and maintaining our beaches.
Yeah.
And maintaining our quality of life here. I wouldn't just automatically say it's back into tourism. Because the beach.
Just like we call the Tourism Development Authority, it's the same thing. I just said I'd like to promote year-round tourism in this town. I like to see the wintertime increase with tourism activity.
Yeah.
Again, because that means revenue. So, I mean, I'm not tourism. So I'm just saying it's not a bad word. It's a good thing. It means lower taxes for us.
Yeah.
As long as we won't have to pay for everything, the wear and tear on the infrastructure, are us and the taxpayers here.
I've always wondered if it was possible to have the beach driving permits be like for the non-residents, like have monthly permits or 2-week permits and have them different colors or something for different times of year. So because I know that folks come in town and they ask about it, they want to drive on the beach, but $200 is too stiff. So if it was $100 a week or something, they might do it because they're leaving again, So
Welcome to the show.
yeah.
So it's, again, your entire job is all a big balance. Right? And so on the surface, that sounds like a great idea, right? But there have also been elected leaders in your spots over the years who maybe wanted to discourage beach driving, or at least the degree of beach driving. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you keep the fee at a certain level, it discourages the joyrider who might misbehave out there.
Sure.
And for example, if you offered a daily pass or a weekly pass or a monthly pass, maybe you wind up with more people out there. And so it's the balance of it all. So.
Only at the point for these temporary passes, they can only.
And there's no right or wrong answer. So
Yeah.
please, when I explain this stuff to you, I'm not telling you because I necessarily agree with it. I'm just telling you what the thought process has been over the years. For example, at one point in time, there was a desire to not make the passes available at the police department because that enables people to get them on the weekends, for example. And maybe you've got people who are not as responsible where they had to come here. Now, from a customer service standpoint, absolutely terrific to have it at the police department. Right? It makes it easier for your customers. So it ultimately depends on what your values are and what you're trying to promote. So could we do weekly passes? Sure. Could we do monthly? Sure.
I see both sides of the argument, sure.
I mean, I want to say we've got maybe, I think, 2,800 beach driving permits issued this year, if I'm not mistaken. I can see the frustration on all of your faces.
Bunch of time.
Well, we can talk, getting back to the FOLA adjustment. Would there be anything that would preclude us, say there's a regular bell curve of all the salaries? have the folks at the lowest end get a higher percentage, the middle gets the middle, and the folks at the high end get the lowest percentage. So that we get the dollars about the same, but the benefit goes.
We could absolutely structure it any way you'd like.
That's the way it works in the private sector, so
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So I think that gets to be a little bit more targeted.
You're talking about the cost of living increase?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you could say, I'm just making this up, but
Yeah.
for example, you could say 5% for people below X dollars,
Yeah.
2% for people over X dollars. We can do, that. If that's what y'all would like to do, we can absolutely do that, but everybody perceives these things different, right? Everybody has their own different family circumstances, and you may wind up offending some employees who also have a significant need as well. And I don't have to tell you this because you're all in business yourselves, but these are the very real things that come up.
yeah, but the tricky part's picking the
Dividing.
line.
What if
And
you
I don't
$10
know,
over the dividing?
yeah, I don't know what the,
Do we, I know, I already know the answer, but I'm gonna ask the question. Does everybody have a review and get rated?
Yeah, so we do not do performance reviews in Emerald Isle. At one point early in my time here, we did them. We stopped doing them under my time here, probably after a few years. I don't think they've done them since Laura was gone, but I could be mistaken. I've got a lot of mixed feelings about the performance reviews. On the one hand, yeah, you want to pay your superstars more money, right? And you want to encourage that. On the other hand, if it's a difference of 1% in salary, I'm not sure, or 2% or whatever, I'm not sure it's that much of a motivator. And in my experience, I've seen it do more harm than good at times. So whether that's right or wrong, or it's my fault that we don't do them, that's the reality, and that's the explanation.
It creates the bell curve, but this is a different environment.
Yeah, so it can't be comfortable.
I would say this, that I think times are very different now than maybe they were 10 years ago, 16 years, 20 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So I'm sharing with you what my experience has been, what I've learned in the course of my career. I could be wrong. Maybe what we did in the past was wrong. Maybe times have changed. We should do something different. So please, when I share these things with you, please take them in that vein, right? I don't want to be the person who says, oh, we can't do it because I was here 15 years ago, we'll do it this way. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. But I share these things with you just to kind of give you the background on it, and you will make whatever judgments you think are appropriate.
This is minuscule money, but I'm just looking for money. Every budget had internet on it. Do we have a town package, or how does that work? Does everybody have their own package in their department? We under a group plan?
It's one, but
Okay.
there's a couple of stat packages. You want to explain that?
Yeah, I'll do the best.
We
That
don't have 10 different accounts.
Okay.
in the non-departmental, the bulk of not specific to a location is in there, and there's a very large 50 megabyte point to point that does all of our office. Any internet that we need that's maybe not to a department, like to run cameras or something, Wi-Fi at the beach, that's in the non-departmental. We have a line that runs through the police department, and this is where I need probably Greg Hayes to help me out. I'm starting to go, oh, I'm on my, but part of it all has to do with redundancy. So if it's very specific to run a police station or run a fire station, we put it in those departments. And then, so that's why we separated it, if we, it was easily identified to a location. But part of all of that does the redundancies, and this is kind of the techie thing, and Frank can jump in, but when, when one line goes down, the other one picks up. So we have that built in. There's other internet service in there as well that you'll see in the departments, particularly for public safety, for like the MiFis, or we call them MiFis. MiFis. So Verizon, that would be coded to your internet expense. So it's a great question. And that's just the way we parsed it out. So if it was very specific to one department, we put it there. If it's kind of town-wide, we'll put it in non-departmental.
So is it provided by Spectrum or basic internet and then Verizon for the?
Yes, and then we have AT&T for the fire department because they really preferred that service over Verizon. They used to be on Verizon, so they're doing, I think it's called First Due now, so some of them will have their own benefits and specialties for departments, and so we go ahead and we'll go venture off, so but yes.
And we negotiated those contracts recently.
Those are all on government contract that I am aware of now, those.
State code.
We get, yes, we do get a lot of good benefit, and we've looked at those over the years, I know we do. From time to time. The VC3 one's the one that hooks us to VC3 is a little bit more expensive, but we have looked at that, because we would try to work directly with the Spectrum folks, so. And one other, caveat too, when we do go into hurricane preparedness, we'll pick up some internet at our, offsite location, which will be our EOC. We'll hook that up and get it ready in the event that we are, called off islands. We can go to it and have, connections, so we do a little bit of preparedness. Not very expensive, though.
Does that include the satellite phones as well?
I believe the satellite phones are in the phone line, if I'm not mistaken. We also have 2 satellite phones, in the, stream event, but we don't have internet and we don't have Verizon. We can still connect out, so, and we pay an annual fee for that.
So you correct me if I'm wrong, but, some of what she's explaining is just the budgeting and accounting and distributing the costs out. Part of it. The simple answer is we have one internet pipe, so to speak, that comes into this campus, and then the buildings are connected by fiber optic line. But then we do have it, Laura said, we have all these other things like for the laptops in the police car, or for the cameras. We have a system here where if Spectrum goes out during a hurricane, it automatically kicks over to Verizon. For example, well, if they both go out, we're in trouble. That's why we have satellite phones. So, but it is. It's one pipe coming into the town organization.
But yes, most of them. I can, well, I don't know, I could finish up, we kind of got off topic, but I think we talked. But I don't mind finishing my little conversation, unless there's more questions, I'm happy to talk about details or.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of the things in the capital improvement plan, and so if you want to sort of spend more time to talk about those things, but the key things are the fires. The other thing I guess we should talk about is the fund balance. So because we are still waiting for about $1 million from FEMA to reimburse us for some expenses that are now more than a year ago. And because of the accounting for the interfund loan that we just did for the Pebble Beach land a couple months ago, our fund balance is going to look lower than it truly is. It's purely just the interfund loan is just the accounting rules. The reimbursement's really just between Laura and I. So the last year, I kept thinking, oh, we're going to get this $1 million in a day now. And it's literally been more than a year right now. So from a practical standpoint, I think we have sufficient reserves to deal with the emergencies. Errors will give us the flexibility. Once we start spending money on building this fire station, $3.5 million, and we're laying out that cash to pay the contractor progress payments. We're gonna have to turn around real quick and file the reimbursements in hopes that they come in relatively quickly. I tell you all of this just because we're gonna do everything we can to avoid it, but there might come a scenario where we've got to do some sort of temporary short-term finance. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't want that to happen, but I just kind of want to put that out.
Or general fund balance appropriation for that, or how would you do that?
Yeah, so a worst case scenario, it might be some sort of short-term banking, really just to tide us over until the FEMA reimbursement comes back. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I just wanted to plant that seed with you and let you know that that's a possibility. Some of it depends on the timing of the beach nourishment project, some of it depends on the timing of the FEMA reimbursements. It's a worst case scenario, but I just wanted to. We're sitting on basically $8.5 million in the beach nourishment fund. If we spend $6 million of it in the spring of next year, then still got $2.5 million. It might be spring a year late, it's those times.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up as part of our budget, because we are required to show that every fiscal year. We're communicating continually with North Carolina Department of Public Safety. This particular project, this one project is unusual. We had the full grant award, but they put it into a strategic fund management program through the FEMA program. It's a little bit different than all of our other projects. When they went to the shutdown, we kind of got paused on it, and so they assured us we had the award, but it's just taken a little longer. It's going through environmental and historical preservation reviews. Our grant manager, she's keeping us abreast where it's at. It's back in business now that we're out of the shutdown. And if everything goes great, we think we're gonna be reimbursed by the fall, by September, based on her timeline. Hopefully it'll be sooner. But I wanted to bring it up because, and I mentioned it at previous budget workshops, part of these FEMA projects, they're really big, but when we hit 75% of the grant, they hold on to that last 25% for us to complete it, and we have to close out, and it goes back through FEMA for another review to make sure we've done everything we were supposed to do. And that closeout process is a long reimbursement scenario. So for example, dollar wise, I still think we're okay, but just for dollar wise, the ambulances, for example, when we get those ambulances in, we're gonna have to close out, we'll be waiting for about $800,000 reimbursement on those. But hopefully the other reimbursements will come through. This is just a new waiting period. And then on the fire station, just once we get the fire station all the way through, we hit that 75% mark. When we wait to close that out, that'd be about $1.4 million that we would be waiting for. But normally when everything's good, we're turning those bills in and we're getting reimbursed every 60 days. So progress payments are coming through. It's traditionally been okay. It's just this was a little bit of an unusual situation, but we're getting good feedback from Ally Donahue at NCDPS and stuff, so we're feeling good about that.
But for example, 25% of 3.5 million, is close to $900,000. So if that's the last bit that we're waiting for, you better have the other $1 million.
So she knows my number when I call. So we're on it. We're monitoring it. That's the important part. We want to let you know about monitoring it.
Okay.
Are there other questions or specific direction that you all want to give us to adjust this in any way? And do you want additional workshops? Or do you want us to prepare for the public hearing on the 9th?
I don't see a need for another workshop. I mean, we have what we need to consider out there today. We can decide and move forward and pass the budget on the 9th, whatever it is.
Well, Jay, this was silent. I heard you guys go.
Well, I agree with Alicia. Everything is here. We discussed it at length today.
Probably the most significant change I heard was just the split of the cost of living increase and market adjustments. Honestly, there's no wrong answer. Either approach is a good approach, and if you want, we can plan on the 3.5% COLA and then allocate the 100,000 for the market adjustments. And then you can learn more. You'll see the study. You'll kind of see where I will have a better sense. So if you want us to make that change, we can. We can also look at distributing it differently depending on the amount of each person's salary. And so
That makes sense, but the budget dollars will be the same.
yeah, the bottom line won't change. It's just a matter of how you divvy them up.
All right.
I've stated my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like everybody reasonably comfortable with that approach.
Yeah.
So, and you can adjust, obviously. You may get feedback from your constituents between now and then, or maybe after meetings on the 9th, you adjust it anyway.
Boy, I feel like you have something to do to say.
Yeah.
We're good.
I don't want to make the meeting any longer, but one of the things that came up that we never went back to was a new police station. Do you want us to plug in something in one of the later years of the capital improvement plan and try to be working toward that?
Well, didn't we have money in the capital improvement plan for it?
In this,
Or was it
Just
just a
a fraction of the.
Just fraction.
We have,
Yeah, I think that it needs to be something that's on our radar or on future boards' radar. Because, I mean, that's where the concept and the idea was born of additional fire stations. I think the need is great, the need is now, but obviously we can't do it right now. But we need that reminder out there that it is necessary.
I think we certainly, you know, the project we plugged in, the fire station one renovation expansion, we certainly could build a police department into that. I know that's been talked about many times and.
Yeah.
Well, it's obviously gonna be a much bigger number than the $2 million we're showing here, but we can incorporate that into.
As long as it's on the radar,
Yeah.
that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely.
But I recognize as a board member, there is a significant need. That's all I'm saying.
I missed part of that conversation, so I was reading something else. What did you, can you repeat it?
So in the draft plan in this booklet, we have $2 million for fire station one renovation and expansion. And that was essentially envisioning a large metal building.
Right.
Connected to the old EMS station. We could certainly broaden the scope of that project and include new facilities for the police department in that. I think we've got the land where we could make that work and also you can go up if you need to. But it's gonna be a much bigger number than 2 million. It's probably gonna be getting up there, probably in the 5-6 million range, maybe more.
Does the police station have to remain there, or is it something we could incorporate into the new Pebble Beach location, since we have extra land there?
I mean, you certainly can put it wherever you'd like. You know, I would think you might want it in a central location in the town. So this is really, I'm sure it's why this facility here for years ago. But yeah, you can put it wherever you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the whole idea of a new combined police, fire station, emergency operations center, maybe even move the administration offices into that as well would be fantastic. Sell this land to someone else, you know, if you wanted to, but you're talking high dollars to make that happen. So we gotta start somewhere.
Right. Okay.
yeah, I like the idea of putting a big number out there to keep it on the radar.
I appreciate the work y'all put into this budget. I think it's a lot of work, a lot of hours you did. You did a good job and. Yeah, there's no plain general fund balance appropriation. That's great. There's no you know, our public safety investments are tied to a need and to a service that's important in our community. And I think you fairly address the employee retention and recruitment issues. Can always, is it perfect? No. It can always be improved. Yes. Could it be worse? Yeah, it could be that too. So, ready to move on with it, I suppose. I mean, I'll have a few questions. I'm gonna send you some stuff later, but that's nothing significant.
Well, unless there's a strong objection, we're gonna renew the Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance plan for next year. I mean, certainly keep looking at other alternatives. I'm open to any.
Absolutely.
So. Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
All right.
All those in favor?